Chapter 70. The Walking Dead, 2, you are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The Walking Dead, 2, the night was accompanied by a shining moon, a spread-out blanket, one candle that barely lit up the room, and the presence of only one man and woman within it. Everyone knew what that meant. It was not like I didn't have such an experience in my previous life, so I knew what kind of situation I was in. However, the problem was the person that was in the room with me. "What are you doing here?" Namgung tilted her head in confusion, wondering why I'd asked her that question. No matter how I looked at it, it looked like she was preparing herself for you know what, but this was Namgung we were talking about. There was no way someone as blank as her could have intentionally set up this mood. Knowing that, I asked Namgung They probably gave us 2 separate rooms, so why are you here? They said, there were no rooms. Who? The sect leader, the Celestial Plum Blossom did. There was no way that they'd run out of rooms though, the Mount Hua sect wasn't a small clan. While I wondered to myself, Elder Shin barged in, good senses were passed down to the lords of the Mount Hua sect, and they are quick to act on it too. Weren't you the one who pretended to not know what Mount Hua was before? Life is just like that sometimes. When I turned to Namgung I noticed that she'd already had her clothes changed and her hair was a bit damp. Because of the moonlight, her already fair skin appeared to shine further. She looked incredibly beautiful. Sigh. But even so, what is she doing? Even if she was this dull, did she really not know what kind of situation we were in? As I continued to gaze at the expressionless Namgung in front of me, I couldn't help but think, I will admit that she's insanely beautiful. The view of Namgung who was sitting down on her blanket whilst looking at the moonlight which was in turn shining down on her, was extremely beautiful. The violent and cold aura that the demonic sword used to release in my memories was a different kind of charm to the elegance and beauty that the Namgung in this life had to her. Her face is a weapon. Even if I didn't want to admit it, I couldn't deny the fact that Namgung was beautiful. Especially when we were staring at each other face to face. I probably wouldn't have been able to keep my mind straight if I faced Namgung like this in my previous life whilst being around this age. I probably would have gotten charmed by her right away. But what about now? Could I maintain my composure? I honestly wasn't sure. That was how stunning Namgung was. Because of the thoughts that were flooding into my mind, I frowned and turned away from her. I felt like I couldn't stay here any longer. It seems like there's been a problem, so you can sleep in this room. I will just go and sleep with the escorts. I just asked them for one more room, they'd definitely give us another room considering it was for a member of the Namgung clan, you idiot. I knew what Elder Shin was going to say and I had no intention of listening to him. All I felt was that I needed to get out of here as soon as possible, but, I felt myself being tugged back. A hand was holding onto my clothes. When I turned around, I saw Namgung pulling on my clothes firmly. She was holding onto it so hard that it wouldn't be easy to escape her grip. "What are you? Don't go." Namgung looked serious when saying those words. What do I say to her? Seriously, how do I even respond to her? Then, do I have to sleep with, can you not? I mean, why can I? Because you are, my fiancé. Namgung didn't even seem to be sure herself as her expression seemed strange. After thinking for a while, Namgung finally spoke with quivering lips. "I'll sleep while only holding on to your hand, huh?" What? Did I hear wrong? What had I just heard? While I visibly froze at her shocking words, Namgung seemed visibly calmer after saying them. Wasn't I the one that was supposed to say such a line? Is that not okay? Where did you learn such a line? Honghua told me that this would work. Isn't Honghua the servant that has always been with Yseol? When did they become so close? Because her line didn't work, Namgung by started to think deeply, which I found funny. I found it funny that she'd spat out those words without even knowing the meaning behind it. And that I was the one who was their recipient. Because of that, I accidentally chuckled, which made Namgung by eyes bigger. You smiled. Sorry, I found it funny. You smiled at me. I'd been trying to make an excuse because I thought that she would be hurt by it, but I stopped talking. I had to. Because Namgung by was smiling. It was quite faint, but was just enough to make it clear that she was smiling. Then, as if charmed, my hand slowly reached for Namgung by cheek. I'd extended my hand to her by myself. You idiot, just what am I doing? As I realized what I'd done, I quickly tried to retrieve my hand, but found that I couldn't, because Namgung by had grabbed my hand that was touching her cheek. I felt her warmth in her hand. Namgung by cheek was cold, but my hand was warm thanks to my chi. However, unlike her cold face, her hand that was grabbing my hand was even warmer than mine. The expression she had on her face even made me tremble on my feet, and I tried my best to ignore it. Namgung by who was leaning her cheek against my hand, spoke. Let's sleep together. Her cheek was redder than usual while uttering those words. It was midnight. I was extremely tired since I had to run around all day, but I couldn't fall asleep easily tonight. Moonlight filtered in through the window that was slightly open. The moonlight was shining on Namgung by hair while she was sleeping. I was looking at Namgung by she fell asleep quickly. Elder Shin appeared suddenly after being quiet for a long time. I couldn't help but laugh quietly after hearing him. Did you go somewhere? Go somewhere my ass, I just fell asleep for a bit. I bet you had a good nap. Yes, I did. Elder Shin wasn't capable of sleeping, nor could he hide. He just stayed quiet. And while I knew that, I didn't know whether to thank him or not. When things were getting hotter, Elder Shin stayed quiet, but the thing he wanted to happen didn't pan out the way he would have preferred. Namgung by actually didn't have any hidden intentions behind her words in the first place, after all. She just really wanted to sleep with me. And to prove that, she fell asleep as soon as she laid down. Then shouldn't I have just slept somewhere else after all? She does fall asleep rather quickly. Was her blank face because maybe she slept a lot? I even had these funny thoughts. What do you think? About what? About the girl that fell asleep next to you. I couldn't say anything to the sudden words Elder Shin spoke. I couldn't answer easily. Elder Shin knew that himself, and so he continued to speak. That I know your feelings for her are closer to guilt than affection. That I don't know what kind of sin you committed at your age for you to feel like that, but I'm sure you know yourself why she looks at you like that. I couldn't deny that. I knew that from the way she looked at me from time to time whenever she would come to me. But why? Just why? Why was Namgung by trying to be with me even in her new life? Why does she feel like that towards me when I have nothing? I slowly reached my hand towards Namgung by who was sleeping with a purring sound. It was to put aside her hair that was tickling her face. When my hand was about to touch her hair, is the moon up? I heard the voice that haunted me in my memories. Because of the voice that stabbed my heart, the hand that was about to touch her hair came back to me. That rainy night didn't happen yet. And I wanted to make sure that something like that would never happen again. The moon that was shining in the sky was still the same. I remembered her endlessly looking at the moon whenever it became night. Even the last moments she'd spent in my arms were clear to me. So far, I was slowly accepting the fact that Namgung by was not the same person I knew in my past life. To put it in another way, it meant that the demonic sword no longer existed. Yet I still didn't dare to be close to her. Because what I felt for her wasn't necessarily love. I wasn't in a situation where I could afford to love anyone in my previous life, as I was busy with other things. But what about now, I asked myself. If it was different from back then? I knew the answer to my question right away, but I wasn't sure. No matter what, I couldn't help but hesitate. Because I'd already lost everything once, and that made it harder to grab onto anything a second time. It seems like I'm still afraid. Because of all the things I experienced in the past, I didn't know whether I should be afraid or not. Because I couldn't be sure about anything I did. If I messed up, I would lose everything again. Furthermore, I felt more like that way right now because I was in a situation where I could die at any moment. Flinch Namgung by moved her body closer to me. It seemed like she was having a nightmare as she was frowning, so I poked the middle of her face with my finger. Then she made a weird sound and moved her body again. I smiled unconsciously after looking at that. It had only been a few months since I regressed. So it was still hard for me. ********* The night had passed and soon it was morning. Along with the sound of chickens clucking from far away, Namgung by woke up, struggling to move her body. She always slept a lot in the morning, so it was hard for her to get up. She was able to see someone through her foggy vision while she wasn't still fully woken up yet. You woke up. Gu Yangchen was sitting down in the room. Oh. Namgung by then realized that she fell asleep next to him last night. Thanks to that, she had been able to sleep without any stench. She didn't have the nightmares she always had, and it even felt easier for her to wake up in the morning compared to usual. She was only able to feel like that only after meeting him. That feeling grew even stronger than usual because she slept directly next to him that day. Gu Yangchen spoke while looking at Namgung by I didn't know you'd fall asleep that quickly. I was sleepy. You should get rid of your sleep crust first. Namgung by quickly rubbed her eyes after hearing him, but she strangely didn't feel anything. Gu Yangchen then spoke while laughing. I was lying, there's nothing there. Namgung by who was glaring at Gu Yangchen after he teased her, felt something unusual. It was different from usual. His aura. It's not that. What was different? Gu Yangchen asked while Namgung by was trapped in her thoughts. I'm going to go eat, you want to come? I'll come. Oh. Then Namgung by finally realized what was different. Gu Yangchen was speaking to her casually. When did that start to happen? Even the usual feeling of him trying to push her away was gone. In just one night. Namgung by after realizing that, felt something thump inside her chest. Huh? What's this feeling? Namgung by didn't know. What? Namgung by quickly shook her head when Gu Yangchen asked. Because she didn't want to risk him going back to his old way of speaking to her by asking him about it. Gu Yangchen slowly stood up. It was because he said he wanted to go eat. Namgung by also started to stand up, following him, but, young master. I'm here. Oh, YC who was nowhere to be seen yesterday, suddenly appeared. YC who was running in with a bright smile, froze after seeing the two. Likewise, Gu Yangchen also froze like a rock after seeing YC He felt cold sweat slowly dripping down his forehead. In that icy atmosphere, the only one who maintained a calm expression was Namgung by Chapter 71. The Walking Dead, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Walking Dead, 3, during the time when Gu Yangchen and Namgung by were asleep. The sect leader's residence, located at the summit of the Mount Hua sect, was still illuminated with lights. Inside the building, a single candle was lit to provide light to the residents, and green plum tea was being brewed by the owner of the residence. It was for a guest that would soon arrive. After filling up the cup with freshly brewed tea, the celestial plum blossom spoke up with his eyes still closed. Come in. Following his remark, the residence's door opened. Surprisingly, the man who entered the residence was none other than the Sword Emperor. He appeared to be already familiar with Celestial Plum Blossom. Calmly, the Sword Emperor entered the residence and sat straight across the already seated Celestial Plum Blossom. Having settled down, the Sword Emperor spoke while gazing at Celestial Plum Blossom. "I'm sorry to have visited you this late, it's alright. I was feeling a bit lonely as of late, anyways." Feeling his throat dry up, the Sword Emperor took a sip of the tea to quench his thirst. The Celestial Plum Blossom patiently waited for him to speak up. After some time had passed with the Sword Emperor organizing his thoughts, he started speaking to the Celestial Plum Blossom. "I came here because I wanted to ask you something." The Celestial Plum Blossom knew, he was aware of the question that he so desperately sought answers to even at this late hour of the night. "You may ask, I'm all ears." Hearing those words, the Sword Emperor inquired without any hesitation in his voice. "Lord, do know where the immortal healer is?" Hearing the Sword Emperor's question, the Celestial Plum Blossom opened his closed eyes. It was a question that he expected to come out of the Sword Emperor's mouth, but he never expected him to be so blunt with it. That was enough to show the desperation the Sword Emperor was feeling right now. The Celestial Plum Blossom replied, "Yes, I do." His prompt reply made the Sword Emperor's eyes widen instantly. "Then, were you already aware that I was looking for the immortal healer?" "Yes, I was actually. Moreover, I am also aware that Wudong and Shaolin are searching for you." However, he had no idea if they were explicitly seeking the Sword Emperor or were after something else connected to him. "Why are you telling me this so readily, then?" "Because I knew that you came here after knowing everything." The fact that the Sword Emperor visited the Celestial Plum Blossom so late at night. He was easily able to understand that it wasn't due to the Mount Hua sect having a stellar reputation. "Isn't that right, Sword Emperor?" "Yes." Shangxi was a vast land. Even though he was aware that the immortal healer was present in these lands, the Sword Emperor believed that it would be difficult for him to find him. Furthermore, using his chi to search for the immortal healer would only draw unwelcome attention his way. Hence, he had believed that it would take him days of searching at the minimum. That was what he had believed thus far, but contrary to his expectations, it had been rather easy to find the whereabouts of the immortal healer. Starting from Huayin had been the right course of action, indeed, as he felt a dense chi from the vicinity of the mountains. The immortal healer wasn't a martial artist. He did have a small amount of chi unlike other average doctors of the world, but there was no way that he would have such a dense and heavy chi in him. Moreover, the chi felt similar to a Taoist. Along with the scent of the plum flowers. It wouldn't be accurate to say that this was some sort of locational magic. As locational magic wouldn't have as blatant of a presence as the one he felt from this location. It would be more appropriate to say that it was a type of barrier. There was almost no difference between a barrier and locational magic, but they had one particular distinction. That being, one of them was primarily used for concealment while the other was used for defense. And there was only one martial artist in the entirety of Shangxi that the Sword Emperor knew of who was capable of constructing a chi barrier of such immense size. "I wasn't entirely certain, which is why I came here to ask you." No matter how thick and sturdy a barrier was, it wasn't a difficult task for the Sword Emperor to just slash through it. Despite his desperation, the Sword Emperor opted to first meet with the Celestial Plum Blossom and talk with him about this matter. "It seems like you didn't just barge through. I thought that it'd be more respectful for me to ask first before doing something like that. This late at night. I'm just joking with you." The Sword Emperor was searching for the immortal healer in these lands. That was what he was pursuing for the past few days, which resulted in his absence. The Celestial Plum Blossom knew about that as well. Though, he was unaware of the exact reasons behind his search. However, the important thing here was, that the sect leaders of Shaolin and Wudong were looking for Sword Emperor. To move around while avoiding those two forces, is this the capability and prowess of the Sword Emperor? While thinking so, the Celestial Plum Blossom suddenly asked him a question. Can I ask why you are looking for the immortal healer? The Sword Emperor immediately looked down after hearing the Celestial Plum Blossom's question. The reason I am looking for him is similar to why anyone else would. The Celestial Plum Blossom nodded after hearing the Sword Emperor's reply. Everyone had their own reasons to look for the world's greatest doctor, but, at the end of the day, they all had one similarity. It was to live or save others' lives. Even though the immortal healer seemed unwilling to help, the Celestial Plum Blossom was aware that he was always disclosing his whereabouts no matter where he went. He also knew that, even though the immortal healer always went on a tangent on how he wanted to quit being a doctor, he still wanted to help others from the bottom of his heart. The Celestial Plum Blossom stared keenly at the Sword Emperor. No matter how he looked at this situation, it didn't seem like the Sword Emperor was looking for the immortal healer for himself. The Celestial Plum Blossom was already aware of the fact that he was a high-level martial artist, but he was not able to figure out just where the Sword Emperor stood among the people of that level. He knew that martial artists throughout the world would always place himself and the Sword Emperor at a similar rank. But only the Celestial Plum Blossom, and he alone knew that the Sword Emperor stood in an entirely different realm compared to him. The Sword Emperor. How fearsome that title is. With such a majestic title, why Hyagun gave off the impression that he was never influenced by anything in the world. But for such a man to act like this and look so weak and pathetic made it impossible for the Celestial Plum Blossom to understand what was going on with him. Is the reason the Shaolin and the Wudong are looking for the Sword Emperor also related to that? The Celestial Plum Blossom always had a different ideal compared to them, so he didn't exactly know about the undercurrents that were surrounding the Sword Emperor. It was just that those two sects, who always preached to care about the future of the world, felt a bit ominous to him. Instead of them, he actually preferred people that only cared about their own benefits such as Gu Ryun or the Immortal Healer. That was also the reason why the Celestial Plum Blossom was friends with them. The Sword Emperor suddenly spoke to the Celestial Plum Blossom as he was lost in such thoughts. Lord. Yes. I kindly request that you tell me where the Immortal Healer is. I think it's more important to consider the Immortal Healer's opinion on this matter rather than mine. Then, how about I open the door myself and go there to talk to him? What he meant by there was probably the small hut where the Immortal Healer was currently residing. This could be seen as a threat, as it basically implied that he would just break through the barrier to get to the Immortal Healer. The Celestial Plum Blossom could only respond with a bitter smile. What would you do if I tell you that you are not allowed to? The Sword Emperor didn't respond to the Celestial Plum Blossom's question, but the Celestial Plum Blossom already knew that he was willing to pay any cost to reach the Immortal Healer, even if that meant creating a conflict between him and the Mount Hua sect. What in the world could make him so desperate? Back when he led the Murim Alliance, he wasn't necessarily an easygoing person, but he was never this kind of desperate man either. The Celestial Plum Blossom heaved a deep and heavy sigh before speaking to the Sword Emperor again. Now is not the time. The Immortal Healer was taking care of the Plum Blossom sword at this time. Gu Yangchen was an exception since the Celestial Plum Blossom personally led him to the hut and it was a quick checkup that was over in an instant. But this was a whole different matter altogether. The Immortal Healer is currently looking after someone else. So even if you go to him right now, you won't be able to get what you want from him. However, the Sword Emperor looked up after hearing the Celestial Plum Blossom's word, who was just staring at his teacup in silence till now. It's not entirely impossible. What do you, the Celestial Plum Blossom asked with a smile. Can you do me a favor? The Sword Emperor didn't respond, but he fixed his posture. It meant that he was going to accept the request. Is this an emergency? Am I going to face an emergency just as I woke up in the morning? Those were my thoughts after seeing YCOL.A. That this was indeed an emergency like no other. It didn't seem like anything big was going on at first glance, but an alarm was going off in my head that was signaling to me that I was about to face a crisis. YCO's eyes also seemed different from usual. Instead of her typically kind smile and puppy eyes, she now donned an expressionless visage on her face. The YCO that always had a smile on her face was no more. And the prolonged silence that could only be described as being uncomfortable of the highest order only made everything worse. After dripping with cold sweat for a while, I finally asked. Did you have a good sleep? Yeah. I see. It was an utterly cold response. I felt like I was about to break out into cold sweat once again. Wait, why am I being conscious of this anyway? It's not like I did anything, right? Namgung was the stubborn fellow who insisted on sleeping with me, so I was just an innocent victim here. So, why am I the one feeling conscious about all of this toward YCO? I felt that, as her master, I needed to say something to her. It seemed like she was starting to forget about her status due to the lenience I had been giving her all the time. It was absolutely absurd for me to feel this way toward YCO as her master. I glared at YCO after organizing my thoughts till there. I saw my reflection in YCO's pure and clear eyes. I then spoke out, thinking of scolding her for acting like that in front of her master. You want a yagua? Yeah. Okay. You still don't refuse food even at times like these, huh? When my head was starting to hurt like hell as I was not able to think up of what to do in this situation, Namgung got up from behind. Her eyes looked droopy as she hadn't fully woken up yet, but for some reason, she looked rather happy. Namgung waved her hands toward YCO. Hi. YCO frowned after seeing Namgung hand gesture. She even started to tear up a little soon after. Sis, you're so mean. Namgung became confused after hearing YCO's sudden and random words. YCO continued to speak with tears brimming in her eyes, threatening to fall at any moment. I also want to sleep with the young master. YCO was on the verge of crying after uttering that line. Namgung quickly went up to her and wiped her eyes with her clothes. What is going on here? I also want to sleep with him. YCO continued to grumble but didn't push back Namgung and let her do as she wanted. She just continued to grumble with tears in her eyes while being embraced by Namgung. And in the middle of all that, I just blankly stood there like an idiot. Then why are you just blankly standing there? Then let's sleep together. Ha. YCO glanced at Namgung after hearing her words, while my body froze in shock. What did you just say? Namgung then responded to my question in a light tone. We can sleep together. My head started to ache at the sheer nonchalance with which she spoke those words. Not only did I have to think about YCO, but I also had no intention of sleeping with Namgung again. Plus, YCO probably didn't want to do that either. Sis, can I really do that? Perhaps not. Namgung just nodded her head in response to the YCO who had asked that question with shiny eyes, filled with anticipation. Yeah, really. Yeah, let's sleep together from now on. Things were getting weirder and weirder by the second. I immediately decided to interrupt them as I felt like things were going in a direction that they should not go. What are you guys saying? Young master. Good more, the person who came in with a loud voice, interrupting my words, was none other than young Peng. He who had entered the room with a bright smile on his face immediately chanced upon the scene of YCO who was sobbing, Namgung who was hugging her, and me who was watching them with a blank expression. I came here to tell you something. Young Peng's eyes started trembling because of the awkward situation he had chanced upon. It seems like I came at the wrong time. I thought I'll come back later. Wait, no, you came at the right time. Where are you going, Master Young Peng? Whether he heard me or not, young Peng just quickly chose to disappear from the spot. Slam after young Peng closed the door and left hurriedly, the sound of the door closing echoed throughout the silent room. He only returned to my room around half an hour later that day. Chapter 72. A bit of a scratch. 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A bit of a scratch. 1. Not long after, young Peng came back to my room. The situation hadn't exactly gotten better, but I told the two girls to go and eat breakfast anyways. YCO seemed like she wasn't completely satisfied with that arrangement, but she still listened to me due to the allure of food. I also had to eat, but I decided to wait first, thinking that whatever young Peng wanted to discuss with me was probably rather urgent considering how early he dropped by. Even after young Peng returned, he still looked a bit uncomfortable with everything. Who would have known that the genius who would be the representative of the Mount Hua sect in the future was the type to get easily bothered by this kind of thing? Is it because he gets beaten up by his seniors? In my eyes, they were just acts born from brotherly love, but it could be different from young Peng's point of view. I spoke to young Peng, whose gaze seemed to be moving about aimlessly. Master Young Peng, what brings you here so early in the morning? Oh. Young Peng smiled after being woken up by my call. Or was it because it didn't feel awkward to him anymore? It's nothing big. The sect leader was looking for you. The Lord. This early in the morning. Celestial Plum Blossom is looking for me. I briefly wondered why he would, but then remembered the thing that was inside of me. Should I go to him now? He said that you could come whenever you are free. So I didn't have to go now then. Thankfully, it seemed like I would be able to eat before entangling into something troublesome. Have you eaten yet? I asked young Peng, who was already running around so early in the morning. Even though I was pretty sure I already knew the answer to that question, considering he was already neatly dressed up in his uniform. Oh, I was on my way to do some morning training after breakfast. This early in the morning. That's commendable. Huh. Don't most people go out to train this early in the morning? What the hell is he on about? I couldn't respond to young Peng's innocent question. The Taoists' mornings started earlier than the average people. It was said that Taoists had to get the energy that lingered right after daybreak, so they had to get up at around 5 to 7 a.m. in the morning. While I usually woke up by the time the sun had completely risen. Today was an exception because I couldn't sleep easily last night. Just say that you couldn't sleep last night because of the breathing you heard next to you. Ahem. Nangung Bai Dada didn't move at all after falling asleep. She just calmly laid still and breathed lightly, but that was enough to keep me up through the night. Thanks to that, I barely got any sleep. I guess I can enjoy the fresh air in the morning thanks to that. The morning breeze always felt refreshing. But I didn't want to experience breathing it much. Getting up so early was hard, after all. Young Peng, for some reason, had shiny eyes after hearing me speak. Why is he making those eyes? Young Peng spoke in response to the question in my mind. Young master, I think that it is fate that we ran into each other right now. How is it fate when you came to me because you had something to tell me? So how about we train together? It was like talking to a brick wall. Just like back when we traveled together on our way to Mount Hua, young Peng, for some reason, wanted to train with me. Whether it was because he was a maniac for training or that he had another intention was something I didn't know, but he would always ask me for training each day whenever we met. No, I had to eat and preferred to train alone, so I was thinking of rejecting him again. But I suddenly got curious about how the people of Mount Hua trained. He asked me every day to train, so did that mean that our method of training was different? And I also thought that there was no way that he would do some stupidly absurd training this early in the morning. If you are fine with waiting for me to eat breakfast first then, yay. So I just accepted the offer to train with him. Thinking that there was no way that it would kill me. That I'd just take it as morning training that was a little heavier than usual. I realized much later, that curiosity really killed the cat. Then again, I already knew that something like this would happen, so why did I make myself go through this again? Fuck my life, asterisk 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 when it hadn't even been 2 hours yet since the training started. Pant, I was down on the ground moaning in pain. I felt dirty because of being covered in sweat, and the pain that I felt in each bone echoed even in my head. Fuck. I could barely even breathe. Young Peng, who had started training at the same time as me, was still going at it as if this sort of training was nothing to him. He'd even told me that he was planning to climb the mountain with sandbags around his wrists and ankles after this. Isn't this guy insane? I hadn't trained lazily after my resurrection. I trained whenever I found free time, so I thought that I was being somewhat hard on myself, and I get that it was somewhat, but whatever I had done was simply incomparable to this. I saw other third-generation students training alongside as well, but young Peng especially trained more than the others. Young master, are you alright? Young Peng soon approached me, feeling worried because I was down on the ground. I saw beads of sweat on his forehead, but it was absurd because his expression seemed mostly refreshed. Young master, are you alright? Pardon. From young Peng's perspective, that question probably sounded absurd. Was my body really this weak? It was probably because I hadn't been putting all of my efforts into training. I felt that I needed to up my training regimen. I felt shameful that I was still living my life somewhat lazily even after regression. I was still half-fainted because of my exhausted body, but thankfully I'd gotten something from this situation. This served as a wake-up call for me. Though I won't be training this much. I forcefully lifted my aching body up. I couldn't get up easily, so I had to use a bit of my chi, but I was able to somehow get up in the end. Will you be fine? While I was wiping off the sweat from my face, Elder Shin asked. What do you mean? Is it okay for you to recklessly use your body like that, with the thing inside you? Elder Shin was referring to the potential collision of chi that could happen inside my body which could damage my body. My destructive flame chi, Mount Hua's chi, and the mysterious thing that was inside of me. I really have a bunch of shit in my body, don't I? The owner of the body didn't even care when there were two things that were living in the body rent-free. Furthermore, I was told that these were things that could explode at any moment, so I could only laugh. However, I'm still fine. I knew what Elder Shin was worried about, but I was still fine. It wasn't because of some careless mindset of, it would have exploded already if it was going to Ednel.co, but I was able to predict that something like this could happen. I also sort of knew the way to solve all of this as well. It was just that it wasn't a cure, but more of a solution or prevention. I really didn't want to do this. Even if what I was thinking was correct, I still had to properly consider it. I needed to. I lifted my hair that was drenched in sweat and asked young Peng. Will you leave after you do more training? Oh, yes, of course, I'm still only around halfway done. What? Shame. It seems like you are not feeling well today. I did have a hard time falling asleep last night. Oh. Then it makes sense that you feel tired so suddenly. I wasn't tired because of that, but I was thankfully able to use that as an excuse. I shook my head at young Peng's absurd words. I should be learning from him as a martial artist, but I wondered why I felt so reluctant about it. It's because you still don't know the beauty of training yet. TSK. Your pain would go away if you just ran a lap. I can't believe you are just giving up without running a lap. Are the people of Mount Hua abnormal one, or am I the odd one out? I honestly didn't know at this point. I washed my sweat away with water and changed my clothing. When I looked inside my place, Namgung was taking a nap as it seemed like she didn't get enough sleep. YCOL was sleeping next to her, and since both of them were so pretty, they looked like blood-related sisters. I didn't like how they were comfortably sleeping when I could barely walk right now. So I went up close to them and squeezed both of their noses. MMH. YCO got up right away because she couldn't breathe, while Namgung by drowsily opened her eyes but didn't get up. She didn't wake up even after that. When YCO got up, I saw that the hair that had been neatly done by Honghua was all messed up from her sleep. I spoke after seeing that. You'll turn into a pig if you sleep right after you eat, you know. Oomph. YCO still hadn't fully woken up yet, so I just patted her head and stood up. Namgung by meanwhile, was already asleep as if she had never woken up in the first place. Young master, where are you going? The sect leader is calling for me. Will it take a while? I'm not sure, but I don't think it'll take that long. Will you come back before bedtime? I probably will, considering I do need to sleep. I would pass on sleeping on the streets. I'd already had enough of that in my previous life. Then it's all good. Have a safe trip. After saying that with a smile, YCO laid down next to Namgung by again. I just let her be since she would soon be taken away by Honghua for work anyways. I lifted my aching body up and made my way to the leader's house. I noticed the students of the Mount Hua sect glancing at me on my way there, but I just ignored them as they stared at me like I was some sort of rare animal. I didn't care as long as they didn't have any ill intent. When I arrived in front of his door, I heard Celestial Plum Blossom say, "Come in." I haven't even said anything yet. He has good hearing. When I carefully entered the building, I was able to smell the scent of green plum tea again, like the last time I came to this place. And there were snacks this time. You told me that you didn't have them last time, did you buy some? Right, I went down to the market yesterday because I had nothing here. Don't they look tasty? They did look sweet and tasty. But I had already grown out of eating sweets, so I just smiled. What was the reason behind you calling me here? The Celestial Plum Blossom let out a hollow laugh when I asked him about why I had been called as soon as I sat down. I was hoping you'd enjoy some tea first. I swear all you guys from Gu are always in a hurry, oh. I was able to picture the second elder within the Celestial Plum Blossom once again. Everything was fine about him except the fact that he was somewhat similar to that fire bear of an old man. It was insane. I was thirsty anyways, so I ate a yagua that was in front of me and washed it down with tea. The Celestial Plum Blossom spoke again after noticing my somewhat dissatisfied expression. It's not much, but do you remember the hut we visited yesterday? Yes. The place where the Plum Blossom Sword resides in, right? It was a place where the Plum Blossom Sword was being treated by the immortal healer, so there was no way that I would forget about it. The Celestial Plum Blossom spoke after handing me a letter. Could you go there and deliver this letter to Tay? Me. It was a bit sudden. Because it was something that was hard to be discussed with outsiders. So why was I being tasked with doing this when there were so many third-generation students of Mount Hua? For example, someone like Young Peng, or Young Peng. I failed to keep my expressions in check and accidentally revealed a confused face. The Celestial Plum Blossom laughed when he saw that. It seems like you are confused as to why I'm asking you to do this. Honestly, yes, as something like this is hard to discuss with outsiders. Most people of the Mount Hua sect don't know where the Plum Blossom Sword is. I felt numb after hearing Celestial Plum Blossom. They don't know. And not many know that she is sick either. Then why was I the one that was allowed to learn about such an important thing? If most people didn't know, then that would most likely include Young Peng and the other third-generation students, the second-generation students, and even the first-generation students. So why am I being informed about such an important matter when I just arrived here out of the blue just to return the treasure? Did Celestial Plum Blossom think this through? But the Celestial Plum Blossom struggled to give an answer to my question. He even seemed like he was avoiding eye contact. Is it just my mistake? I asked just in case. Did you, perhaps, forget about it? Ahem. Of course not. I was certain after seeing his reaction. He really forgot about such a thing. I was more certain after hearing Celestial Plum Blossom's fake cough. I thought that maybe he had a plan since he suddenly took me to the Immortal Healer, but he'd actually just gone there without a plan. Mount Hua sect, is their future really going to be okay? Oh God, help us all. Even Elder Shin was seeking out God for help. Even so, for an outsider like me to take care of this and not the leader, Yagua. Ha! You ate the Yagua. What are you? I was wondering what the Celestial Plum Blossom was talking about, so I looked around, and I found an empty spot on the dish that had Yaguas on it. A piece from the dish was missing because I'd eaten it. Is he really going to make me do this just for a piece of Yagua? I wanted to believe that it wasn't true, but I became speechless after looking at Celestial Plum Blossom, who was avoiding eye contact as if he was embarrassed. The heroic image of the Celestial Plum Blossom that I had imagined in my head was completely crushed and crumbled. I spoke to Celestial Plum Blossom. My lord, yes. Now I get why you are friends with the second elder, ahem. The Celestial Plum Blossom turned his head away after hearing my comment about him and the second elder. It seemed like he was also embarrassed by that fact. Chapter 73. A bit of a scratch, too. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A bit of a scratch, too. Gu Ryungwa's day starts at dawn. Just like any other martial artists of the Mount Hua sect, instead of waking up with the advent of sunrise, she woke up a bit before that and waited for it to rise beyond the horizon. Putting on her uniform, she would be careful while going outside so that her movements don't hamper her master's sleep. Usually, her mornings consisted of either going out to the forest to train or doing some chores, but today, she had to leave for the market. The Immortal Healer had instructed her to do that. She had been tasked with buying some medicinal ingredients, so she started going on her way to the market with the silver coin that was given to her. Usually, if a kid tried to purchase medicinal ingredients, they would often give them low-quality ingredients or just not give them anything at all. But that was not bound to happen as she wore the uniform of the Mount Hua sect. It would be more likely for the stores to give her more than the required quantity, as no one in Huayin City dared to do any dirty acts against anyone belonging to the Mount Hua sect, located directly above them. The Immortal Healer likely took advantage of that face. Gu Ryungwa looked at the paper that listed the things she needed to buy. The paper list had been given to her by the Immortal Healer and she swiftly purchased everything that was written on it. It smells so bitter. She left the medicine store with the box that contained the ingredients inside it. When she went out of the medicinal store, she saw many stalls that were selling a variety of different foods that aroused her temptation. She slowed down, compelled to do so by the delicious smell of food, but it wasn't enough to completely stop her in her tracks. Her master was more important to her than the mere temptation of food. Time to return. Did master wake up yet? She noticed that her master started to sleep more and more as she was slowly getting weaker. So she was worried that she was still asleep. She idly wondered if the meal would be prepared by the time she arrived at the hut. Gu Ryungwa was feeling quite a bit bothered as she had been forced to spend most of her day alongside the Immortal Healer's grandson due to various circumstances. However, a surprising thing to note was that the little boy was extremely skilled in cooking. She didn't know what kind of person the boy was, but he seemed smart and took care of chores quickly, which was rather impressive in her opinion. I need to be like that too. She thought as such because she wanted to be more helpful to her master by knowing different kinds of skills. As she thought along those lines, she was forced to stop her steps. She wouldn't make it past this year. The Immortal Healer's comment suddenly echoed throughout Gu Ryungwa's head. Drop quickly, she wiped off the tears that had unknowingly streamed down her cheeks. She didn't want to make her master worried, as she had her ways of always knowing whenever she cried. It didn't matter whatever method she used to try and hide it, she could never hide it for long from her master. But even so, it wasn't easy for her to stop her tears. As tears that had already broken out, like coming out of a broken dam, could never be stopped easily. That's why Gu Ryunghwa hated crying. She continued wiping off the tears that were flowing down her cheeks and thought inside her mind, if master passes away, she wondered what she would have left in her life once her master dies. Nothing. She would have nothing left. Gu Ryunghwa was certain of that. Family. I hate that word, as the mere mention of that word was enough for her to curl up in deep fear. Even to this day, Gu Ryunghwa was able to clearly make out that dark horrifying night. It was both a foggy and clear memory, something that she could never forget. The day when there was no light in sight, her mother's cries paired with the cold unfeeling look of her father as he looked down. And the sight of Gu Yanghian, kneeling on the ground. Gu Ryunghwa could never forget that memory. Since those were the very last moments of her mother, the day that ruined everything in her life. But then, what about the Mount Hua sect? She could only shake her head as she wasn't sure what to think about them. She would always growl whenever someone tried to approach her. Furthermore, Gu Ryunghwa was a student that had joined later but still somehow became a second-generation student, so she wasn't really able to get with the third-generation students. So she wondered if the Mount Hua sect would let her stay there once her master died. And even if they did, she wondered absent-mindedly if she could even handle it. Gu Ryunghwa continued to wipe the tears that showed no signs of stopping. Eventually, she arrived at the vicinity of the hut. She reminded herself to keep herself together and look as normal as possible. As she believed that to be the least she could do as a disciple. Having prepared herself mentally, she took a step forward, and immediately disappeared altogether. Almost akin to smoke that instantly blends into the atmosphere. Due to that phenomenon, some men that were watching Gu Ryunghwa quietly had no choice but to speak out with confused expressions on their faces. Where did she go? Maybe she noticed us. You think we'd be found out by a girl that barely seems like she's a second-rate martial artist? It'd be more believable to say that the celestial plum blossom himself transformed into that girl. Just shut up and start searching for her. I think we finally found something. A small man, wearing a black bandana on his head, started the search on the area around which Gu Ryunghwa had disappeared. It didn't seem like there was anything special there, but he felt something off about the area. Was it perhaps space manipulation arts? He wondered why anyone would set up something like that in the middle of a mountain, so he reached his arm out toward the area the girl had vanished. Bump. However, he found his hand bouncing off as it came into contact with some sort of invisible wall. It was extremely harsh as well. The man thought to himself while massaging his hand that had gotten numb. Not locational magic, huh? It seemed like some bits of locational magic were put into it to make it invisible, but this was more of a barrier. A barrier that had a ton of chi put into it at that. Did the celestial plum blossom do this? It could be possible that it was done by someone else, but the only person that came into his mind, who was capable of putting up such a barrier around this place, was the celestial plum blossom. As not even his monster of a branch manager was capable to set up such a barrier. It seems like I did find something. He wondered if the person he was looking for was really inside this barrier. I should first inform about this to the branch manager. He was not capable enough to break through this barrier and would be caught by the personnel of the Mount Hua sect if he tried anything reckless here. We're going back. The man had just delivered those words and immediately there was a disappointed tone coming out of a man beside him that couldn't help but ask, "We are really going back?" The voice was accompanied by the grinding noises of teeth sliding against teeth, showing his disappointment and displeasure with that decision. The man wearing the bandana was certain that this pig of a crew member of his was just disappointed because of the girl that had disappeared into the empty space not long ago. What's the problem, Dusum? The girl that we just saw. She was pretty, so can we go back after we get a little taste of her, boss? The man wearing the bandana visibly cringed after hearing the words coming out of Dusum's mouth. Please, for fuck's sake, I told you not to cause a scene here. Are you actually being serious right now? Even with the scolding that the bandana-wearing man gave him, Dusum just slurped his tongue disappointedly, not paying heed to the man's words. But, it's been so long since I've got a taste of someone, and wouldn't it be nice for boss as well? Stop saying disgusting things like that. You're saying that we'll have a good time when the girl has barely even grown up. God damn it, wake the fuck up, you fucking idiot. But, she was wearing the uniform of the Mount Hua sect, so wouldn't the branch manager boss like it if we brought her to him? She's a goddamn child, so what could we even get out of her? Fuck, just leave the children alone. Right, leave the children. Okay, then let's go back to business now. The man had to stop his words short. At the same time, all of the men that were roaming in the vicinity of the barrier also had to stop their movements, as they heard a completely new and unique voice enter the conversation. He didn't hesitate for even a second. The bandana-wearing man quickly pulled out his sword and swung it in the direction of the origin of that new voice. Slash. He swung it with full force, but it only cut through air. He definitely felt a presence there, he was sure of it. Crack. The sounds of breaking bones were accompanied by Dusum's groaning noises. The man couldn't help but look at Dusum and was immediately able to see his gigantic body collapsing onto the ground. He wasn't as big as the branch manager, but he was still almost as big as him. Slam. The giant of a man soon fell and made a huge rumbling noise that echoed in the silent forest. His neck had been twisted to the point that anyone looking at him could tell that he was dead. You. Who are you? The bandana-wearing man asked. He could see a boy standing behind Dusum's fallen body. A very slight tint of red could be seen at the ends of his black hair, but his eyes were as red as freshly drawn blood. It was obvious that he was a martial artist with the red uniform he was wearing while keeping a firm posture. The boy soon looked at the man and answered in a murderous tone. What will you do even if I tell you, you scumbags? Curses followed by a destructive flame bursting out from the boy's body that instantly engulfed everything in its path. The quiet and peaceful forest had instantly turned into a battleground. Blaze. Almost instantly, the wild and unruly flames spread throughout the whole area. The man, Bei Chong, couldn't understand what was happening. Who is that crazy monster of a boy that suddenly came out of nowhere? He had only come out to scout this area, so he could never expect something like this happening. He believed that he had done his best to not get caught by the forces of the Mount Hua sect, but he had unexpectedly ran into this monstrous boy. He couldn't help but glance at Dusum's corpse. Aside from his neck, twisted in a grotesque shape, he could find no other wounds on his dead body. However, it was obvious that it all happened instantly. He had no hesitation in killing someone. There was no way that a boy his age could do something like that. Furthermore, it would have been much harder for him since he was only using his bare hands. So how the hell is this boy able to do that when he doesn't even look like he reached the age of 20 yet? Furthermore, blaze. Fuck. The man barely managed to dodge the onslaught of the raging flames by blocking it with his sword. He wondered just what in hell this crazy flame was. Flame arts. There should be no one in Shangxi who can use flame arts like this though. The man also noticed something within the wild and unruly flames. Just one look was enough for Bei Chong to tell that the boy had full control of the unruly and all-devouring flames. That was enough for him to know that the boy had already reached a level most people would never be able to reach in their lifetimes. This only meant that Bei Chong, who had already surpassed the realms of an ordinary first-rate martial artist, was helpless to do anything about the boy. Is that a monster in human skin? As Bei Chong clenched his fists while thinking like that, one of his crew members was caught by the hair with the boy's hand. The monstrous boy soon enveloped his hands in flames which in turn burned the crew member alive. The scream of a man being burned alive echoed inside the forest, but the boy's emotionless eyes never changed since he stepped in this place. I made a small mistake. The boy spoke slowly. Hearing his voice, Bei Chong could only feel goosebumps crawling all over his skin. An abyss so deep that there was nothing he could feel. That was the place Bei Chong felt he was now in. I should have killed that pig by burning his insides first, but I made a mistake because it's been a while since I've killed someone. How can such a small boy look like he was so used to doing such things? Furthermore, those cruel words and actions he spoke of somehow suited his looks. Bei Chong could only ask, trying his best to hide the cold sweat that was drenching his skin. Jew, just what the hell are you? Did you not hear me before? I asked what you will do even if I tell you that. Do you even know who we are? It's obvious that you are flies that belong to the Black Palace's leader. Hearing those words coming out of the boy's mouth, Bei Chong instantly froze on the spot. How did you? The boy smiled while inching closer to Bei Chong. The flames never lost their blistering heat and the boy, marching toward him, killed another man on the way. Kayak. The sound of a man's harrowing screams echoed again. BL.net, let me also ask you something. Fire to Bei Chong, the boy that was slowly walking toward him looked more like an embodiment of flames than a human. The living embodiment of flames slowly inched closer and closer to him and asked, I didn't know much about you guys, but I found something interesting. Bei Chong felt like the world around him was slowly but surely melting away. How can a person look like that? He felt a whole new sense of fear which was different from the fear he felt from the branch manager. Even though the term fear applied in both cases, their levels were entirely different. Bei Chong wondered in his head what the hell he was going against right now. Then the flames that were lingering around him grabbed one of Bei Chong's arms. Umph. He couldn't scream even while he watched his arm burn away into ashes due to the all-encompassing fear he felt. He could only try to take a step back and run away from this malevolent force of fear and despair. Then the flames continued talking while nailing Bei Chong down with his gaze. Why do you guys? His sharp eyes were shining in a deep shade of blood red. Have the demonic chi inside of you? The boy's question was accompanied by a severely burnt smell, however, Bei Chong was unable to give an answer. Chapter 74. A bit of a scratch. 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A bit of a scratch. 3. Blazed the unruly flames that had seemingly devoured the entire forest slowly went away along with the wind. In just one hand movement, the flames that had been busy burning down the forest were absorbed back into my body. When the raucous flames were fully absorbed back into my body, I felt a little bit of my chi getting recharged. Phew. I heaved a sigh after retracting all of my chi back into my body and saw hot steam leaking out of my mouth. How much did I use just now? I felt like I had used up a fair bit there. Well, at least you know. Elder Shin, who had spoken just now, sounded a bit exhausted. Do you even know how hard it is to calm that fucking thing down when it's trying its best to destroy everything around it? Was it really that dangerous? If you had used even a little bit more of your chi, then I probably wouldn't have been able to stop it any longer. It was that close, I was able to realize that fact once I looked at the sight of the burnt corpses. As I had not held back just then, there was literally no corpse wasn't severely damaged by the flames. The forest, permeating with a refreshing and cool breeze, was now filled with the overwhelming smell of burning. As I cleaned my uniform with my hands, I thought. First time, This was the first time I had killed someone after my regression. It was a very strange feeling for me. But I didn't think too deeply about it. It wasn't like I had promised myself that I would never kill anyone just 'cause I resurrected, right? They were people that were members of the Black Palace, one of the forces of the unorthodox faction, and were people that were after my little sister. But then why is my heart beating so fast right now? I belatedly noticed that my hands were shaking along with my harshly beating heart. Are my mind and body contradicting themselves right now? I shouldn't think too much about it. It had happened in my previous life as well and it got better with time. So I just had to ignore it till it did. What are you going to do with the one that ran away? The guy that seemed like the leader of this ragtag group ran away, in the end, and I looked in the direction he ran away towards. At first, I had made up my mind to catch him and kill him like everyone else, but I had to change my mind after noticing the slight traces of demonic chi that was inside of him. I felt like it would be better to keep him alive so that I could get more information out of him. It was very slight, but the chi that he possessed was definitely demonic chi. How did the guys from the Black Palace get their hands on demonic chi? Do they already have some sort of relationship with the demonic cult? There is no way that's possible though. There were still a few years left until the heavenly demon and the demonic cult appeared in this world. Was it even demonic chi in the first place? I wasn't really certain as I had mostly forgotten the sensation of demonic chi. Moreover, it felt a bit too weak to be labeled as demonic chi. Which made me regret more and more that I wasn't able to catch him just now. He was faster than I expected. I should have burned his legs and not his arm back then. It had been so long since I had a real fight like that. My head's not acting as I want it to in this situation. I knew that even the slightest mistake would be enough to have my head chopped off by their weapons, but still, for me to make a mistake like this, perhaps I had already become too weak-minded because of the current situation of peace the world was in. And how should I clean up all of this? My head started to ache and throb after looking at the corpses that were strewn about everywhere on the forest ground. If I was stronger, I could have just burned them all into ashes. And I became more and more pissed when I saw the guy I had killed by twisting his neck. I should have started killing him by burning his internal organs from the inside out first, but I kinda gave him a painless death. He didn't deserve a painless death. The fact that he had such nasty thoughts toward a literal child that could barely reach his waist was already enough for me to want to torture him like no tomorrow. And the fact that the kid he was having those thoughts toward was Gu Ryungwa further strengthened my murderous desires and simultaneously pissed me off further as I had not able to have my way with him. It looked like you treat her like shit, but you do care about your sister after all. Not necessarily. Not necessarily my ass, at least, say that after fixing your expressions first. I had to discuss this matter with the celestial plum blossom first. One thing that made me worried was how he would take this information, considering this was murder and he was a Taoist before he was a martial artist. Then Elder Shin suddenly spoke out loud, which made me ponder. You just killed people that deserve to be killed, so I don't think you should be thinking too much about it. A Taoist before being a martial artist. A martial artist before being a Taoist. Elder Shin experienced a huge disaster of the world, the Blood Demon War, so it sounded like he didn't find this scene very shocking. But on the contrary, I didn't know how the celestial plum blossom would react to this information in the current peaceful world. I already knew that you had a lot of secrets, though what you did just now was still a bit surprising. I smiled bitterly at Elder Shin's words. I knew that he was trying to be considerate of me by saying that. The appearance of the Black Palace and that demonic chi. I wonder why those guys were lingering around this area. It didn't seem like their main goal was Gu Ryungwa. Weren't Young Peng and others of the Mount Hua sect were scouting the areas for the disappearance of their people? Does this relate to that? I feel like I would be involved in some hassle at this rate. For starters, I got rid of the heat from the surroundings and then moved all the corpses over to one spot. I knew that I'd run into a problem if I were to try to hide them far away. I just had to discuss this problem with the celestial plum blossom after I got back to clear things out on my end. I briefly cleaned the area and then moved toward the hut. It seemed like those guys weren't able to go through the barrier, but I was able to go through it without any problems. There was not a single feeling of resistance throughout, which made my entry into the area very smooth. What was the difference between us? My curiosity was soon answered by Elder Shin's words. L.rg It's because of the chi of the Mount Hua sect that you have inside your body. You're telling me it's because of me absorbing the treasure's power. It seems to be the most likely case to me, yes. A barrier is able to have the ability to detect that. That made me once again realize the true power that the celestial plum blossom held. As I got closer to the hut, I was able to smell something delicious wafting out. Were they preparing a meal? When I went closer to the hut, I saw Gu Ryungwa working hard and moving around outside the hut. What are you doing here? She turned toward me after hearing my words. And instantly frowned, looking displeased. Why did you come back? The sect leader asked me to deliver something. To you. To me. Her reaction told me that it was pretty weird for me to do an errand for the leader. Yes, I find it extraordinary too. For him to task me with something like this just because of one Yagua. I soon noticed Juga Hyuk chopping something from behind. When our eyes met, he slightly lowered his head, which I assumed was a form of him greeting me. What's he doing? Can't you tell? He's cooking. He can cook. Was something I probably shouldn't have asked judging by the way he was chopping down that onion. He's better than I expected. Was what she said with a tone that seemed to be saying that her pride was hurt just by uttering that sentence. What's up with her? Where is the immortal healer? In the hut, taking care of master. Okay. I tried to enter the hut after hearing her words, but Gu Ryungwa suddenly grabbed my clothes very firmly with her hands. What? Whoa. What's up with your hand? My hand. I didn't know what she was talking about, so I looked at my hand and noticed a small wound there. I thought I had dodged everything, but it seemed like something still managed to scratch me. I didn't really care much about it though, as it was just a small scratch. Suddenly, I was forced to think after looking at my sister's face. What would have happened if I wasn't here today? I don't think anything big would have happened, to be honest. As it didn't seem like they were particularly strong enough to break through the barrier outside. Still, it didn't make my mood any better though. Nor did it change my attitude about those fuckers. And my impatience and shitty temper only forced me to take out the anger I had been feeling out on them by annihilating all of them with my flam arts. That's for the better. I pulled my sleeves away from Gu Ryungwa's hand and spoke. I just got a bit of a scratch. Her face instantly morphed into a suspicious expression at those words, but she didn't have anything to use to interrogate me further. Stop worrying about me and keep doing whatever you were doing. Who said I was worried? I ignored Gu Ryungwa's shouting and slightly knocked on the door. Knock knock, who is it? Immediately, I was able to hear the immortal healer's voice, coming out of the hut. It's Gu Yangchen from a few days ago. Who, oh. The door of the hut opened soon after. The immortal healer was wearing the same uniform he had worn the last time I visited this place. He was making a sour face as soon as he saw me, so it seemed like he didn't feel good about my arrival. What brings you here? The celestial plum blossom ordered me to deliver this to you. When the immortal took out the letter from celestial plum blossom, his expression frowned gradually. It was as if I was watching the process of water boiling into higher temperatures. Now that I think about it, he sent me because he was scared to do this himself, huh? I wouldn't put it past him. The immortal healer couldn't take out his anger on me, so he could only make a TSK noise and put the letter in his pocket. Doa, that piece of shit, he's definitely gonna go to hell. How could he words like that about the leader of the clan? Anyways, now that I was done delivering the letter to him, I was planning to go back. Where are you going? Huh. But surprisingly, the immortal healer stopped me from leaving. Why is he stopping me when he looked like he was ready to kick me out at any second? Then I was reminded of the scratch that Gu Ryungwa had pointed out on my way here. Did he stop me because of that? This is just a small scratch my ass, you're really going to lie to a doctor now? No, really, it's a scratch that would heal if I just spat some saliva on it, so I'm really fine. What kind of a crazy fucker spits on a wound? This is why I hate guys that have nothing but martial arts in their brains. Wait. Don't make an old man use his strength and come in when I'm asking you to. I was actually worried that if I harshly hit the immortal healer's hand, that was grabbing my arm, then it would shatter into pieces, so I was unable to use my strength recklessly. Because of that, I was forced to go inside the hut. Asterisk 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 in the Black Palace, inside the room of the branch manager, thump. Thump. Bei Chong was repeatedly slamming his head over a bloody puddle in the hard ground of the hall. Opposite to him, Yahiljik just kept staring at him with a blank gaze. 5 men that were sent alongside Bei Chong were killed, and Bei Chong who had managed to get back was now incapable of using his left arm. Yahiljik couldn't help but ask Bei Chong. So, who is it again? I'm afraid I don't know. It was a new face. A new face. I see. Crack, crackle. Along with Yahiljik's words, the air in the cave was pressured down onto him, which made Bei Chong cough up blood. So you're telling me that everyone died to some random guy, and you were the only one that returned alive? I'm sore, Fuck. Are you being serious here? Yahiljik swung his giant sword, which instantly cut off Bei Chong's disabled arm. Ag. Hey, you piece of shit, you think I sent you along with the others for something like this to happen? Ugh, hi. I thought that if I included a smart-looking one in the group, everything will go smoothly, but who could have thought that you would come back like this and I would have to be disappointed by a piece of shit like you? I'm sorry. Branch manager, Tui. Yahiljik spat next to Bei Chong. They were already short on members in their branch, and most of the guys that were sent out to scout were now killed. To some random child at that. Bei Chong had told Yahiljik that this random child was a flame arts user. There weren't many martial artists that used the flame arts, and as far as Yahiljik knew, one needed immense training to just be able to summon the flames. Where did such a monster pop up from? It was even worse that he was aware of their identity as the members of the Black Palace. Yahiljik grabbed the shoulder that was cut off from Bei Chong and spoke to the shaking man. Bei Chong. Yes, you want to live, right? Yes. Please give me one more chance, branch manager. I intentionally cut off your injured arm, how nice of me, right? Bei Chong looked at the arm that was cut off from him by the giant bastard. He was feeling infuriated on the inside, but all Bei Chong was able to do was to force a smile on his face. Yes, of course. I thank you for your divine mercy. Right. Yahiljik then tapped Bei Chong's cheeks after speaking like that. He wanted to slice his neck off and hang it on the walls, but there was no one else in this branch that was as smart as Bei Chong. So he thought that maybe he should just completely disable him by cutting off both of his legs and only leaving him with the ability to speak. But he was still a first-rate martial artist and just some value left in him that made it hard for Yahiljik to do something like that. How many days do you need to get information? Bei Chong responded while trembling at Yahiljik's question. I will get the information about him at the latest 4 days. 4 days, huh? You'll also come with information on Immortal Healer as well, yes? Yes. I'll come back with everything. I like your spirit, do a good job, yeah. Yahiljik stood up and turned around, then took out something from his leather pocket and tossed it toward Bei Chong. It was a marble made of chi the size of a thumb. It's 4 days' worth. Bei Chong shuddered in fear after seeing that. The martial artists that belonged to various branches of the Black Palace would eat something that served as a seal. The seal that wiggled inside their body and would explode if they didn't consume the necessary medicine in time, resulting in their internal organs melting and leading to their deaths. Fuck. Bei Chong clenched his teeth in anger and frustration. Now he really needed to get all the information in just 4 days, no matter the cost. Chapter 75. Cold in the Midst of Summer, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Cold in the midst of summer, 1, as I entered the hut, I immediately saw the plum blossom sword, breathing faintly while sleeping. In my attempt to not wake her up from her slumber, I carefully sat in an open spot. The immortal healer searched for some medicine in bandages through the drawers to apply to my wound. A small wound like this would heal in no time for a martial artist with a decent amount of chi inside of their body. You aren't thinking anything like that, right? Oh, of course not. How keen. Just because someone is a martial artist, it doesn't mean that they will still live if their throat has been slit, or their heart has been pulled out. After speaking those words, the immortal healer started applying the medicine on my injured hand. It stung slightly at the start, but it felt better when he wrapped the bandages over it. I think someone like you would know that more than the others. Huh. What happened outside? I was stunned at the sudden unexpected words that had come out of the immortal healer's mouth. Did he ask me that question while already knowing everything that happened outside? He had a serious expression on his face as if assuring me that he definitely knew what happened. How did he find out? I did my best not to get any blood on me though. I was thinking of pretending not to know at first, but it wasn't like I could really hide it, since if I informed the celestial plum blossom about this, he would tell the immortal healer anyways. So I responded with a light smile. I had to take care of some punks outside. I saw some guys lurking around the hut. Did they look like they'd be a threat? Yes, I believe they belonged to the unorthodox faction. The immortal healer's expression changed drastically. It was as if he felt pity for me. Why was he making that face? Is it because I look young? I mean, I am young. Is this your first time? What do you, of killing someone? I didn't know how to respond to that question, so I remained quiet. I was wondering why he was looking at me like that, but I guess it was probably due to that. My hands were still shaking a bit from the previous fight, and the expression on the immortal healer's face was deadly serious as he gazed at my trembling hands. There was only one thing I could say to him at that moment. I'm fine. My body still hadn't fully calmed down yet, but it wasn't like I was thinking too deeply about all this either. Does he think that this is his fault? He's a more considerate old man than I thought. I guess it made sense as to why he became a doctor. It was something I would experience in my life at one point anyways. The immortal healer cared about the life of everyone, no matter who they were, and I wasn't about to tell him to not treat everyone equally now. All this didn't mean much to martial artists. Which was exactly why the immortal healer was probably making that bitter expression right now. There was a group of men that were lingering around the hut. The celestial plum blossom would have done something about it if I told him anyways. Thank you. I couldn't help but make a surprised expression when I heard his words of gratitude. I did not expect to hear that from him. The immortal healer frowned when he read through my thoughts. What is that face that you're making? Do you not even see me as a man that knows how to thank people who helped me? No, it's not like that. Not like that, my ass. Don't bother lying like that in any other place, as your face just gives it all away. Does it really? Your face basically speaks for itself, so don't even think about trying. Is it really that bad? I thought I did a good job hiding it until now. I was ready to stand up as it seemed like the treatment of my wounds was done. Don't go overboard with the training and try to lean towards vegetables when you eat. I stopped in my tracks at the immortal healer's sudden words. When I looked back at him, the immortal healer leaked out a fake cough and signaled me to leave the hut. After experiencing what seemed like being kicked outside, I stood in a daze outside of the hut while Elder Shin suddenly spoke in my mind. It seems like he said that because of the energy inside your body. Oh. He said that he wouldn't treat me or anything, but did he actually care after all? He really was more considerate than I gave him credit for. Now that I mention it, what are you gonna do with the thing inside you? What do you mean by what would I do? I was told that I would have to live on with my life praying that it doesn't explode. So, I will do just that. You mentioned before that you might have a solution to this problem though. I bit my lips after hearing his words. I did have a plan, but I was still feeling hesitant about it. However, I had to quickly come to a decision as I probably didn't have much time left. Hey! While I was standing still, Gu Ryungwa suddenly spoke up. Is your treatment done? As you can see, she was cutting down some ingredients with a kitchen knife on her hands. What is that, a potato? It's been cut down so much that I could barely tell that it's a potato, so I was wondering if I should ask her about it. Gu Ryungwa was focusing her all into cutting that single potato though. After cutting the almost non-existent potato for a long time, she suddenly spoke again. Are you okay? I tilted my head in confusion after hearing her question, then responded as I noticed that she was looking at my wounded hand while asking that question. Are you worried? Hearing that, she shouted back at me, as though annoyed that I even had the galls to say that to her. Who said I was worried? I was just gonna tell you to screw off if you are finished here. I was planning on it, so don't worry. I said I wasn't worried. She was being loud for no reason, so I just ignored her. I let Gu Ryungwa chirp at me all she wanted and started to make my way back to Mount Hua. After arriving back at Mount Hua, I went back to the Celestial Plum Blossom's house and told him everything that happened. It was just a light task of me delivering a letter, but to suddenly hear that I came back after killing a bunch of people was enough to make his expression turn serious. I'm sorry. The first thing he said with that serious face was unexpectedly an apology. I told him that it was fine. Thankfully, he didn't ask about the mess I had created in the forest. He just informed me that he will check it later. The conversation on this bothersome topic ended after he told me that he would send some martial artists to the area to scout it, but his face still didn't ease up. It seems like I'll need to do a thorough scouting of the area. He was concerned about how there were people near the barrier, and how one of them even got away after learning about it. There were only so many people that knew about the fact that the Celestial Plum Blossom was taking care of the Plum Blossom Sword at a safe place that was inside that very barrier. But considering how an outsider like me found out, it wouldn't have been weird for him to suspect me for the recent incident. However, the Celestial Plum Blossom didn't seem to have any intention of thinking like that. Even though there were incidents of martial artists of the Mount Hua sect disappearing recently. Was that also the Black Palace's doing? I didn't know, but I felt like that was very likely what happened in reality. I wanted to know what they were doing at this time period and how they had that slight bit of demonic chi inside of their body, but I had no way to find out. As there I wasn't even able to fully use my own body. Kid. Yes. I instantly responded to his call and looked at him. After organizing his thoughts for some time, his expression eased back to its usual state. For him to be so calm even at times like these. I unknowingly felt a bit of respect for him. You had some difficulty in your work. So I'll come to you some days later with a gift, since keeping you here for any longer would only make you more exhausted. A gift. Since an outsider got involved with the Mount Hua sex conflicts, it is my responsibility to give you an adequate payment. He could have blamed me for killing them so gruesomely with my flame arts, but I just shut my mouth since he said he'll do something for me. How can I reject a gift? After thinking like that, I bowed my head and left his place. He told me that the Mount Hua sect will take care of the rest, so this problem was solved on my end. And the worst thing I got out of this was just a small scratch on my hand, so I was really grateful about everything. What a lenient world you live in, brat. I could more or less understand why Elder Shin spoke like that. To be fair, it could have been just because this was the Mount Hua sect, but the current world I was living in was much more peaceful than the world of the future I experienced in my previous life. Though that future isn't all that far away. At most a few years. Only a few more years were left until that dreaded time of the world came knocking. After running the errand, it had gotten a bit past lunchtime already. When I went inside the lodge, the servants were working on the house chores. Where is YCO? It became a habit of mine to look for her whenever I returned, but, as expected, YCOLDA was working hard on the house chores along with the servants. When she noticed me, she smiled brightly and waved her hand. I waved back. I was wondering if the Sword Emperor was here since YCOLDA was, but I wasn't able to find him no matter where I looked. I did not expect that YCOLDA would come back alone to the sect. But since it made no sense for me to even dare to worry about the Sword Emperor, I just took it as him having some business of his own in Shangxi and went inside my room, ending that trail of thoughts. I was wondering if Namgung Bai was still sleeping, but the room was currently empty. Where did she go? The blankets were folded neatly, so it seemed like it had been quite some time since she left the room. But did she even have any place to go in Mount Hua? While I was standing there and thinking to myself in confusion, the servant that was passing by spoke to me. Lady Namgung went to the mountain. The mountain. What does she got to do going there? I saw her bring a wooden sword with her, so I believe that she went there to train. Oh, I see. Thanks. Yes, the servant flinched when I conveyed my gratitude to her. I thought things had gotten better between me and the servants, but was it still the same? For a servant to be so scared of being thanked by you just. How did you treat them before? I was a bit harsh with them in the past. I do try my best to treat them better now though. I was just thankful that I had not resurrected at a time when I caused a massive scene. If I regressed at a time that's 1 or 2 years further into the future, what would have happened? I don't even want to think about it. After watching YCOLDA do the laundry, I went to the mountain where Namgung Bai had reportedly gone to. I didn't really have a particular reason behind going there besides being curious about why that Dumbo went to the mountain out of all places. Even just looking at the mountain's height made me want to puke. Due to the chi I had used earlier in the morning, it was still pretty tiring for me to climb it even after using chi. Swoosh. While I was walking past the trees, I felt a sudden sharp sensation going past my body. Namgung Bai didn't really show off much presence besides her heaven-defying beauty, but she had a special characteristic of her own that was just like her previous life self. Whoosh. Swoosh. Namgung Bai would become a completely different person altogether when she would grab hold of a sword. Her usual dumb eyes would vanish instantly and it would be replaced by an eerie level of focus that would all go forth into her sword. It wasn't really hard to find Namgung Bai due to that very trait. When I found a small opening in the forest, I saw Namgung Bai swinging her sword in the middle of that area. It seemed like I wasn't the only one that had looked at her, as I noticed some guys from the Mount Hua sect around the area. There's more than I expected. Are they observing her? Some people were observing her movements. Even with so many people staring at her like that, Namgung Bai continued to train as though there was nothing could impede her focus. A sharp sensation that pressured the entire area, Namgung Bai holding a wooden sword in her hands, was moving as though she was walking on top of sharp sword tips. The appearance I had seen the very first time I met her after regression in this life, the Master of Swords. Namgung Bai flexible movements that couldn't even be dared to be compared to her useless brother was being shown openly. The flexible movements made by the Master of Swords were overpowering the entire area surrounding the forest opening. How impressive! Spoke Elder Shin, as he had once mentioned when seeing young Peng. To be honest, Namgung Bai looked far more impressive than young Peng in my eyes. Unlike the sharp chi that the clansmen of the Namgung clan were renowned for showcasing in their swords, Namgung Bai was moving fluidly and elegantly. It looked like I was watching a sword dance. She wanted to further enhance her art on the path of swords, while simultaneously looking for enlightenment within that path. Hence, she spread her wings to reach that enlightenment and it looked elegant and utterly mesmerizing. I honestly found it hard to believe that she was being called the Master of Swords with such elegant movement. I was reminded once again of Namgung Bai's excellence. Both young Peng and Namgung Bai and the other geniuses and prodigies of the world. They were already showing their own light. Unlike me at this time. The current world is brimming with passion, huh? I nodded, agreeing with Elder Shin's words. I watched Namgung by Dada's sword dance for a long time, but the swordplay she was showing now felt a bit different than what I was used to. I couldn't feel any violence within it, unlike when I watched it being displayed by the demonic sword, and instead only felt the notes of purity and elegance contained within it. Beautiful. That was the only thing I had to say about her sword art. Her sword dance was truly that much mesmerizing to my eyes. Crunch. Namgung by Dada stopped her sword dance when she heard a small noise that had been made in the distance. Oh. The people that were watching her sounded as though they were disappointed as she had stopped. Which just showed how perfect her performance had been in reality. Namgung by Dada looked in the direction of where the noise originated. And at the end of that path, was me standing on the ground. Shit, I really stepped on that. I thought I was being careful, but I still accidentally stepped on a branch. Everyone was watching Namgung by Dada, but she was only looking towards me. As she had moved about so much, there were faint traces of sweat on her forehead. But she didn't care too much about it and wiped her sweat with her clothes. Ha! While Namgung by Dada was looking at me, her eyes suddenly contorted and then widened as though she was greatly shocked by something. All of a sudden, she even threw her wooden sword away and ran toward me in a fast pace. Reaching where I was in a flash, Namgung by Dada pulled my clothes with both of her hands and started sniffing me like an anxious dog. What the? What are you doing? I tried to push her away in shock, but Namgung by Dada was persistent and didn't budge. It looked like she was shocked at the same time she felt despair. Why does she look so desperate? After she was done sniffing me with her trembling eyes, she backed off, seemingly having calmed down slightly. Then her legs suddenly gave out, making her collapse on the ground. Why are you acting like that? Are you hurt by any chance? Thank goodness, she looked relieved after sniffing me for that long. Was it just me, or did it seem like she leaked more cold sweat due to this than the sweat she had accumulated from her training? She was sweating so profusely, so I had no choice but to go closer to her and wipe her sweat away with my own clothes. Suddenly, she grabbed my hand with her own trembling ones. After grabbing my wrist, carefully, she pulled my hand toward her nose. I was wondering in my mind just why the hell she was acting like that. Do I smell? Did I stink? Some cumbersome things did happen earlier, but I didn't really move around so much that I would stink though. Namgung by Dada shook her head quickly, responding to my question in a small voice. You don't stink. I felt relieved, for some reason, after hearing her say that. After sitting there for a long time, Namgung by Dada lifted her body up weakly. For like the 100th time, I was wondering in my head if I should take back my hand from hers or keep it there. In the end, I decided to leave my hand there since she seemed so serious. If you chose the other option there, I swear you are not qualified to be a man any longer. Did you finish your training? Yeah. You sure you don't want to continue? I think you still got some time to train more. Since you are here. Is she saying she's going to stop because I'm here? I was wondering if she really had to do that because of me, but trying to understand Namgung by Dada would just make me get a massive headache, so I didn't even try. Quietly picking up her wooden sword, she trotted over to me with quick steps. Your hand, it's hurt. Yeah, just a scratch. I swear every person is asking me this today. I could then hear a disappointed tone leaking out of her mouth. I wanted to ask you for a duel. I now felt thankful that I had gotten hurt. Chapter 76. Cold in the midst of summer, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Cold in the midst of summer, 2, what was that stench? Namgung by Dada had wondered about that ever since she was young. She wondered why she was the only one able to smell the horrible stench while the others couldn't. It felt like she was living in an endless hell. A life of endless suffering where she couldn't even comfortably eat, talk, or even sleep. Is it even possible to escape? Namgung Bai Ah lived a life constantly enveloped by the thick putrid stench, seemingly lost inside a thick and heavy mist. But thankfully, even inside the horrible stench that covered her existence, there was one thing that kept her going. Her sword. Swinging her sword gave her a sense of freedom. Because of that, Namgung Bai Ah became obsessed with the sword. By swinging her sword, she was able to pretend that there was nothing bad around her. So she swung her sword every day. Yet every time her training ended, the stench kept coming back, and the stench her spectators emitted became stronger and stronger. Namgung Bai Ah wondered, since the stench went away whenever she swung her sword, would it go away completely if she reached the ideal peak of her swordplay? As a result, she made it her mission to constantly seek out sword wielders stronger than her, challenging them one by one, while dedicating the rest of her time training herself. As she grew older, the putrid stench in her home grew stronger as well, and her aversion to talking to people caused her to become increasingly withdrawn from reality. The jealousy, greed, and desire of people could all be felt amidst that stench. Maybe that's the cause of the stench. Namgung Bai Ah wasn't certain about that. She felt like there was something more to it than just that. As the days went on, she eventually lost the ability to express her emotions. She couldn't remember the last time she had smiled. Perhaps, the day her mother died and she lost her for all eternity was the day she also lost her smile. She was getting tired of the stench she could feel, even while blocking her nose with her hands. She wanted to live alone on a mountain, but her clan wouldn't let her be. As the days passed, the foul smell of the people surrounding her only became increasingly worse. Her brother, especially, was changing more and more. He was getting more aggressive as the days went on, and his eyes held many disgusting emotions. Namgung Bai Ah was struggling to keep herself going because of everything. She idly wondered if she would really be able to find peace once she reached the ideal peak of her sword arts. If there would be peace at the end of her path if she just lived on. She wondered whether she was merely grasping onto thin strands of hope. While she was living a life where she felt like she was constantly standing at the edge of a cliff. She met him. It was the first time for her. The very first time in her life when the rotten stench that tormented her all throughout her life had completely vanished. As though the mist and fog that covered her existence were being blown somewhere far away, only peace and tranquility remained when she was around him. The person who had sharp eyes, an annoyed tone of voice, and who constantly told her to stay away from him. Namgung Bai Ah found comfort in his presence, free from the stench that plagued her life. He didn't have the greed and desire that she would often spot in others. Instead, he would just look at her with guilt and a hint of desperation. She wanted to ask the man a question as he kept looking at her, seemingly thinking of someone else. Who was he searching for? What was he thinking, for him to look at her that way? But she couldn't ask, in the end, so Namgung Bai Ah was still unaware of the intention behind that gaze. It kept reminding her of the question she was asked by Tang Soil recently. Do you perhaps like young Master Gu? Namgung Bai Ah, at the time, really thought that she didn't. It certainly wasn't love she felt towards him at that time. What about now? Was it any different now? She asked herself that question, but no answer came back. It was a question that was harder to comprehend than the identity of the stench. Harder dilemma than the stench. While she was swinging her sword in the mountain, her eyes gazed with the eyes of the guy she had been thinking of. The first thing she noticed was his hand, which seemed to be wounded. Startled by the sight, she rushed towards him. But as she did, she noticed a slight bit of stench coming from him at that moment. It was slight, but it was certainly the stench she knew all too well. Namgung Bai Ah felt like the world was crumbling around her at that moment. She kept telling herself that it wasn't true and grabbed him and smelled him. Begging in her mind for it to not be true. He was the only one who could provide her comfort in this world. She was able to eat comfortably, and she didn't have nightmares when she was next to him. She was even able to be around people when he was by her side. She was finally learning how to become a proper human, so she couldn't afford to lose him. Thankfully, the slight bit of stench she had felt on him was no more, assuring her that it was just her mistake. When she was assured that her peace wouldn't go away, her legs lost strength, and she collapsed onto the ground. He came closer to her and carefully wiped away the cold sweat that was flowing down her face. She grabbed his arm and pulled it towards her nose. She was worried that she would lose her peace once again, which made her do that subconscious action. I see. So that's what despair felt like. The peace she experienced had taught her the fear of losing something she adored. She told herself that she could never let him go. To Namgung by the titled fiancé that was seemingly meaningless before, now appeared to be a blessing she probably won't ever find again in her life. She imagined her life without him. A life filled with that horrible stench that she was forced to live in. Could she really return to that life? Namgung by held his hand more firmly after imagining a life she despised with her very being. Namgung by seemed a bit off, so I had no choice but to go back to the lodge with her. Why is she sweating so much? I heard that not even dogs would catch a cold in the summer. Did she get a flu? A flu for a martial artist, huh? It was very hard to get a flu if a person had chi inside their body. Especially for a person like Namgung by who was a high-level martial artist. I was wondering if it was something other than a flu, so I told her to go see a doctor, but she shook her head and just went to go wash herself. Young master. When the time to eat dinner came, Old stubbornly stuck by my side. I had to go through the trouble of calming her down because she was about to cry when she saw my wounded hand. Old also looked like she was really into cooking lately, because she kept bringing me food. Even though the Mount Hua sect gave us food already. Of course, it wasn't some grand meal being served to us because it was a Taoist clan, but I didn't care as long as I got to fill my stomach. I think it's been a while since I had a dumpling. It felt like it's been a few days since I'd eaten them. I should buy some when I go to the market. Though I don't think I'll be going there for a while. Because of Mount Hua's location, it was a hassle to go down the mountain and then climb back up. I took a bite of this nameless mysterious food Old brought me. It was very uncomfortable for me as she was looking at me so excitedly. As soon as I had eaten the food, I had to spit it out. Salty. Really? Just because of one word, tears welled up in the corner of her eyes. I knew she worked hard on the food, so I patted her head and revealed that I was just joking. I'm kidding, it's tasty. Hey. You're so cruel for joking all the time. I can't help it because your reactions are always so funny. I now didn't have a problem with touching her hair anymore. Did I become less hesitant? Old who was leaning her head into my hand, was looking at me with round puppy eyes. Fef. Whoa, it even stretches. What sensation is this? Now I know why Gu Huibi was so surprised when she touched her cheeks. So this is what it feels like. Beg, oh, sorry. Old was glaring at me while rubbing her cheeks. I might have stretched it a bit too hard. I then asked her. Where is Elder Y? I assumed that Old didn't come back to Mount Hua by herself. I expected that the Sword Emperor would come with her, but I couldn't see him anywhere. Old responded while rubbing her cheeks that had turned red. Grandpa said he'll come back after he takes care of something. Takes care of something, huh? What did the Sword Emperor have to do in Shangxi for him to leave Old alone? I wasn't worried about him or anything, but I was curious. Why did the Sword Emperor come to Shangxi, and why is the Immortal Healer here? And about Zhuge Hyuk being the grandson of the Immortal Healer. Why are there so many? The disappearance of the Mount Hua sect's people, and the state of the Plum Blossom Sword. Each incident would already shake the world on its own, but now they had combined into one and resulted in the creation of a huge problem. I felt like there was one thing that was involved with all the problems. Young master. Your face turned ugly again, what did you say? It's been a while since I was insulted for my looks. But it wasn't too damaging because I had already been called a mantis before. Don't go around saying that to people. Why? Because real ugly people would get hurt by it. But you do become ugly when you make that face, right? I felt like I was getting stabbed in the heart because of her words. Pretty girls, I swear. She probably said that because I was frowning while thinking about all the complicated things, so I should make some time in the future and educate her on the ways of speaking to others. I think she said that because you really do look ugly. Please stay quiet. My heart is already hurt enough and yet you are still adding more salt to the wound. I ate some more greens and finished the dinner. I told YCOL.A to take care of Namgung by A because she didn't come out to eat. Apparently, she wasn't feeling well. I was looking around thinking about taking a walk. Hiya. Mind your legs. Your arms have been neglected. I heard the third generation students training outside. I believe that it was due to the upcoming event that concerned them. I guess it's a tournament that the students of the Mount Hua sect will be participating in. And I believe that I will go back to my clan around the time that event ends. I asked Young Peng and he said that it lasts around 1 to 2 days, so it wasn't that long. I prayed in my heart that nothing bad would happen during those days. The problem is the demonic chi I had felt earlier. The flies that belonged to the Black Palace. But to call it a demonic chi felt like their inside was too nasty. To be more specific, it was low quality and felt imperfect. It felt like a cheap version of the demonic chi I felt from the demonic cult. So I believe that it wasn't related to the heavenly demon. Are you thinking of those guys from earlier? Yes, something about them is bothering me. Are they famous? I wouldn't say that they are famous, but they aren't too secretive either. The leader of the Black Palace was one of the masters that represented the unorthodox faction. Even when the Black Dragon had been slain by the Sword Emperor, the Lord of the Black Palace remained calm. Was I too careless? It was because I knew they would be destroyed by the Murim Alliance a few years later, but now I feel conflicted after learning that the Black Palace could have been the origin of demonic chi when I believed that it was the heavenly demon. I'm not going to just ignore this since I did let one of them get away. They probably know that this was informed to the sect leader of Mount Hua, so they wouldn't act recklessly. I knew that they had received heavy casualties, but I still believed that they wouldn't just take this lying down. The celestial plum blossom would take care of the rest in this area. I had many other things to think about besides this shitty situation. It was impossible to find some information about the Black Palace in Shangxi. While I was making my way back to the lodge, putting aside my complicated thoughts, someone from afar ran toward me. Young Master Gu. It was Young Peng, covered in sweat from head to toe. What the hell? Master Young Peng. Are you going out for some training after dinner? Ha. No. The air tonight is quite fresh. I think that you would feel refreshed if you trained tonight. Oh, I see. Did this guy train non-stop from morning until night? That I like him the most out of the group, with his talent and efforts. The strongest martial artist of the Mount Hua sect in the near future will definitely be him. As Elder Shin had pointed out enthusiastically, Young Peng would come to represent the Mount Hua sect in the future as long as history doesn't change. As long as some crazy maniac doesn't annihilate Mount Hua all by themselves, that is. Fuck. Ha. Did you say something, young Master Gu? No, it's nothing, really. Oh. I see. If you are free, how about you do some after dinner training? Even with that intense training he had conducted in the morning, he still looked refreshed while asking for more training. I wanted to just lay down back at my place because of the many troublesome things that took place today, but seeing Young Peng like that stimulated me. Let's go, then. Yeah, a little bit of training wouldn't hurt anyone because I would just go to sleep anyways. I regretted that after only a few minutes. Asterisk 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 the Mount Hua sect is a crazy place indeed. Ugh, the after-dinner training I joined as I had gotten tempted by young Peng's words ended in me running away from it not even halfway in. Putting aside the absurd training regimen, what kind of crazy maniac carries a boulder on their back and climbs a cliff? And yet, there were other equally grueling exercises that I had to endure repeatedly. My muscles were dying while screaming in pain, but young Peng looked like he was enjoying himself. How could a guy like that face a wall that he couldn't overcome? Did something happen to him? Are you sure it's not because you stimulated him? What kind of person changes that much just because of one duel? You don't know that. Did the duel we have really change him that much? If that was the case, I was relieved since he had changed for the better, but it was also scary how he changed that much over such a short period of time. When I told him that I couldn't take it anymore and that I was leaving, young Peng looked disappointed and said that he'll train a little more and then return to his quarters. I barely listened to him and quickly came down the mountain. My body was at its limit because of everything that happened in the daytime, plus the dinner training I did with an already exhausted body. I went back to the lodge, washed myself with cold water, and changed into clean clothes. I wanted to sleep immediately. Because I didn't get much sleep last night, I felt like I'll be able to have a deep sleep tonight. Was my thought before I opened my door. Slide, young mast. Slide, tap. I quickly closed the door without noticing myself. I could have sworn I saw Namgung by and Ycol inside. It was just a hallucination, right? Chapter 77. Cold in the midst of summer, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cold in the midst of summer, 3. It was around 1 a.m. in the dead of the night. I had already laid down to sleep. If one wants to become a true Taoist, one must throw away all desires including lust. Elder Shin's voice, in the dead of the night, sounded really serious for reasons that I was not aware of. I think this was probably the most serious I have heard him speak since the day I have met the elder. If one gets distracted by every small thing, one will never be able to reach their goal both as a martial artist and a Taoist. He spoke rapidly without stuttering a single word. Did you know that high-ranking people of the Mount Hua sect don't marry anyone throughout their lives? It's all to further enhance their chance of gaining enlightenment. The one who would become the lord and the face of the Mount Hua sect usually refrained from getting married, although there were a few instances when the Taoists within the sect still chose to marry. Though I could care less if they married or not, to be honest. After briefly listening to Elder Shin's nagging words, I replied to him with clear disinterest in my face. So what's your point? I hope you go die, you little brat. Elder Shin shouted out loud inside my head that I don't see how you are attracting all these flowers when you look like an ugly mantis. What has the world come to? So what you are saying is, that you died never having a single relationship with anyone, while I'm getting all these girls at a young age, right? You're not actually angry at me for something like that, right? You, little. Though I couldn't see his face, I could vividly imagine him trembling with unimaginable anger and agony right about now. So he was just recounting his sob story, huh? Now I was able to understand why he got so angry at me whenever things like this tended to happen. So you really never met any? Geez, what are you screaming for, I quickly shut myself up when I heard the sounds that came from either of my sides. Earlier, the exhaustion I felt from every inch of my body made me feel like I was about to faint at any moment, but now, I was wide awake because of the scenario that I was facing right now. In the dark room, I found myself sandwiched between Ycol and Namgung by who were respectively on my right and left. Namgung by fell asleep right away like yesterday, while Ycol eventually fell asleep after chatting with me for some time. I was extremely surprised and shocked when I first opened the door and saw the scene of them waving at me with all the blankets already set up. I thought I was dreaming for a second there. If you are wondering how this all happened, it was because I didn't really have the time to ask for a new room for Namgung by because of everything that happened earlier in the day, and I couldn't just kick out YCO who seemed like she was about to cry at any second the moment I told her she couldn't sleep with me. Why is sis allowed but not me? Was what she asked me with an indignant voice while she started crying the next moment. Hence, I was not able to really say anything to her after that. I could have just said that it was because she was just a servant, but I knew that I couldn't take back those words once they leaked out of my mouth. I could just imagine what kind of face YCO would make if I actually said that, and I couldn't bring myself to say such a thing and live through the consequence of my action. Also, since the Sword Emperor wasn't here, I just decided to let her stay in the room since I didn't have the necessary energy to deal with her in the first place. I was already aware of the phenomenon called summer snow. However, snow and summer did not belong in the same sentence. The logic I had built up did not dictate the existence of such a scenario. How could it be so cold in the summer for it to snow? Was my thoughts about this nonsensical matter at first, but now I felt like I kind of knew what was meant by those words. Swish, swoosh with the breathing sounds that came from Namgung by and YCO and their scent that I was able to smell wafting in the air and filling this entire room, it was impossible for me to fall asleep, no matter how hard I tried to. I didn't even feel the heat of the summer any longer. I honestly felt like I was about to go crazy at this point as I felt cold rather than hot in this summer weather. My senses were a haywire. I usually sleep in a shrimp position, putting my head to the side, but I couldn't do that right now since no matter which side I chose to put my head on, there was a face there waiting for me. Smell their scent. How perverted of you. Please just sleep already. Have you ever seen a ghost sleep? Ugh. I lifted up my severely exhausted body, and immediately my shoulders ached from the uncomfortable position I had been in. I thought I had moved carefully just now, but YCO who was right next to my arm, started to make some uncomfortable noises when I moved my body. She was chewing her hair in her sleep. It seemed like even in her dreams, she was probably eating something. What is she eating? Maybe some noodles. After wondering about such a pointless thought, I placed YCO's hair, which was covering her face, to the sides. When I placed her hair to the sides like that, her pale skin and pink lips came into view. Even though she didn't have a fully grown up face yet, her face still had an otherworldly charm to it. She probably also needs to put on a veil as well. A veil didn't really suit a servant, but there was no other choice when it came to her. She wasn't just your average pretty girl, after all. Moreover, thinking of the stuff that happened in my past life, it was almost mandatory to put a veil over her face. In 1 or 2 years, I'll probably have to cover her face up with a veil. If I'm still with her by then, that is. It was a bitter thought. The gnawing thought that I would not be able to stay with YCO never left my mind. Since it wasn't too weird for me to leave it all anyways. I was blessed with the care and affection that YCO showered me with every day, but the notion that I probably didn't deserve such a thing never left my mind. I couldn't help but constantly think like that. Suddenly, YCO grabbed my hand in her sleep. Her hand was soft and warm. Grandpa, it seemed like she was dreaming about the Sword Emperor. I patted YCO's head lightly with my other hand and carefully, with utmost quietness, got up from my bed as I was sure that I would not be able to sleep in the current state I was in. I brought one pillow with me and went into a corner of the room. You are making a sad decision, you know. Not a sad decision. If I was not able to sleep tonight then, being a martial artist or not didn't matter, I was more or less sure that I would die of exhaustion. I laid down after putting down the pillow on the hard wooden floor. Since I couldn't hear their breathing or smell their lingering scent any longer, I was able to thankfully fall asleep rather quickly. Asterisk 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 asterisk, chirp, chirp. Chirp. I woke up to the sound of the chirping of birds. Just hearing that was enough for me to be certain that it was already morning. I wanted to sleep until it was at least noon. Why did I wake up so suddenly then? I tried my best to ignore the progressively growing sense of annoyance that was plaguing my mind and tried to get up. However, I soon found out that I was not able to move at all, as though someone had pinned me down to the ground. Is this sleep paralysis? I moved my head around and checked the surroundings, and, almost immediately, noticed the bluish-white hair that was slightly placed above my chest. What the? When I finally woke up for real, I found that both my arms had been taken hostage in my sleep. Namgung Bai and Yseol were grabbing onto them from both sides as they slept. What are they doing here when I went out of my way to sleep in a corner of the room? Just what happened during the night? Elder Shin. Don't call for me. What are you? Did something happen last night? That I saw nothing. What is he even saying? Putting aside Elder Shin's weird reaction, I wanted to really get up right about now, but my arms weren't able to easily escape their grasp. Seriously, what are they doing? What if someone sees, sly-eyed, this? As soon as I spoke those words, the door abruptly opened and my eyes met with the newcomers. There weren't any servants who could just bluntly open the door without asking for permission first, and it was even less likely for it to be a martial artist from the Mount Hua sect, so there were only a few options left that came to my mind. When I finally checked to see who had barged into my room, I couldn't help but start sweating all over. It was someone who had the least possibility among the few options that had come to my mind. It was none other than Gu Ryunghwa, my little sister, who had opened the door and barged inside. The face of my little sister gradually morphed into a deep frown as she looked at the two girls that were next to me. I get that it was bad timing, but how should I explain myself to her now? How should I even begin to make her understand that this isn't what it looks like? That we only slept while holding our hands. Wow, how persuasive. I could not just blurt those silly words out when she saw me in the floor with two girls sleeping beside me in the morning. While I was wondering what I should say to her now to solve this misunderstanding, Gu Ryunghwa, who seemed like she was about to say something to me, suddenly closed the door with a chilly frown on her face. I'll wait outside. I reminded myself that it was already too late for me to mend this misunderstanding once I heard the chilly edge in her voice coming from outside. I tried my best to escape the two annoying girls' grasp, and in the end, I was barely able to release one of my hands after tickling Yseol.a's hips. Kayef. Yseol.a instantly woke up after I tickled her like that and started rolling on the floor in shock and surprise. And no sooner had one of my hands gotten free, I used it to bonk Namgung Bai.a on the head. Namgung Bai.a finally woke up when she felt a hit on her forehead. When her grasp over my other hand got loose, I quickly pulled my arm out and hastily exited the room. When I came out, I was able to see Gu Ryunghwa sitting on the floor outside. No matter how I spun my head, I was still not able to decide what to say to him and kept rolling my eyes here and there in a fluster. However, it seemed like I didn't need to say anything as she decided to speak to me first. Master wants to see you. What? I was utterly dumbfounded since I had never expected to hear something like that. She was disappointed that she didn't get to see you the last time you came. When she spoke of the last time, did she mean the time that I had went over to the hut to deliver a letter for the immortal healer? The plum blossom sword herself. Why? She did tell me that she was friends with my mother, so perhaps she wanted to see me as I was the son of her friend or something like that. She asked you to visit her once last time before you returned to the clan. Okay, is that why you came all the way here? This early in the morning? Are you crazy? Of course, I had other things to do too when I decided to come here. She spoke with clear annoyance on her face. But if I knew that I'd see such a sight first thing in the morning, I would have decided to come a bit later. Why did you come to the sect anyway? Is it weird for a sect member to come to their own sect? In your case, yes, it is. I spoke these words as I knew that she spent most of her time in the hut taking care of the plum blossom sword, her master. Gu Ryunghwa just leaked out a deep, almost tired, sigh with a disgusted expression that made her look like she had just chewed down a bug. I just came here for the tournament, mind your own business. I was minding my own business, but you're the one that came here. Are you also going to participate in the tournament? Isn't that obvious? Right. I was originally planning on going back to the Gu clan once the tournament ended, but since I already returned the treasure and Gu Ryungwa already revealed her intentions to not return to the clan, I think I can just leave without waiting for the tournament to end. I saw no problem in leaving early as long as I was able to dig up some more information about Juga Hyuk and the Black Palace. While I was trapped in such thoughts, Gu Ryungwa stood up and went on her way to leave as her work here was now done. I'm done here. You can go back to playing with those ugly girls of yours once again. What? Ugly? Yeah, since all girls that will ever be with you are, she abruptly stopped without finishing her words. Immediately, I noticed that Gu Ryungwa had suddenly gotten extremely shocked by something, judging by the severe trembling of her pupils. She was still looking at my direction, but I was sure that she wasn't looking at me. It was more like, behind me. I turned my head, wondering what could get her so shocked all of a sudden, and I immediately saw Namgung by Dada standing there with a sleepy look on her face while staring at Gu Ryungwa. Moreover, YCOL.A was also there half asleep. Gu Ryungwa had become frozen on her spot as she had seen both of them at the same time. Perhaps she had become so shocked because even one of their beauties was already devastating enough, but there were actually two such girls here at the same time. Gu Ryungwa seemed like she was trying to say something with those quivering lips of hers. But she just quickly left this place, disappearing from our sight, and didn't manage to say anything in the end. What's up with her? After I was done having breakfast with the two sleepyheads. YCOL.A, as always, had been taken away by Honghua while Namgung by A just went on her way to train on the mountain. Meanwhile, I was called to discuss about the guys from the Black Palace at around 12 p.m. Not a single clean body. There were 3 corpses laid about in the room. I believe there were about 5 or more bodies there when I left, but some of them had become utterly ruined by the wild beasts, so they were not able to bring them here. One of them had died by getting their neck twisted beyond belief while the others were burned to death. That was more or less everything I did to them, so I had nothing to say in this situation. But there one thing I was certain of, thankfully, they don't seem to be demonic humans. The humans that were converted into demonic humans by the heavenly demons would see their bodies turn completely black once they met their demise. But the guys I had killed in the forest didn't have their bodies change color to black, although it seemed like they did because of being burnt alive by me. A man who was thoroughly observing the corpse suddenly spoke to the celestial plum blossom. It's hard to say with one of the bodies being already ruined so much, but judging from the other 2 bodies, it does seem like they belonged to Western Dragon. The scar they had on all of their shoulders seemed to be the symbol of the organization they belonged to. The scars seemed to be quite old, so they were surely not made in recent times. Isn't Western Dragon the group that's been disbanded by the Murim Alliance a few years ago? Bandits were very rare existences at this time period, but there were still some groups that existed out there. I believe some of them, that had escaped at the time of their disbandment, were taken in by another group. People joining a new group after losing their former ones happened quite frequently in the martial world. As just because they lost their former group, didn't mean that they would suddenly turn into nice people. And there was usually one place people like them gathered and merged with. The Black Palace. The fact that the celestial plum blossom along with other elders were frowning right now was most likely because they were able to identify these people as members of the Black Palace. Or maybe it was because they were able trying to connect their existence with the disappearances of the people of the Mount Hua sect. Lord, should we increase the scouting range? One of the elders spoke up, breaking the unsettling silence. He wanted to further their scouting range since they had already found a clue pertaining to the disappearance of their people. Though some seemed to be disagreeing with this suggestion. Senior, then we might lose more of our students. Then are you saying we should just do nothing in fear? We already lost enough of our students. That's not. Stop. Swoosh. With just one word from the clan leader, the scent of plum flowers instantly permeated the whole area. After overpowering this place with his aura and existence, he once again spoke with a calm smile. An outsider is here with us. I get that you are desperate, but keep calm and gather your bearings. I apologize. My apologies. Lord. I kept watching their exchange with a dumb look on my face. Thankfully, no one blamed me for this incident. I do have a plan for scouting. You made a plan. The way you look at me with such doubt is making me really sad. I apologize. He apologized but didn't deny it, huh? To get such treatment even from his own people when he was literally the sect leader. Just how much trouble did he cause to the clan and its members? Ahem, anyways, I apologize to you once again for getting tangled with the business of Mount Hua sect, kid. It's not a problem. Once I finish talking with the elders, I'll prepare the reward I had mentioned to you before. Thank you. I wanted to say that there was no need for that since I just did what I had to do, but I had a nagging feeling that if I said something like that, the celestial plum blossom would just bite back at me. As expected, the celestial plum blossom was looking at me with weird eyes. But it looked like he couldn't joke around since there were other elders of the clan here right now. I left the place as it seemed like they wanted to talk about something amongst themselves. Something that an outsider should not be privy to. It looks like it went well. Yeah, I even prepared some things to say just in case, but there was no need for that it seems. The Taoist clans are very understanding after all. Ironic coming from you. Now that I look at it, Elder Shin didn't seem to care too much about the Mount Hua sect of the current times. For instance, how he wasn't much fazed even when the people of the Mount Hua sect kept disappearing. He just looked satisfied that the sect was able to remain standing even to this day. The current people of the sect were responsible for what was happening in the present times. Or something like that, was what he told me. I guess this can be a form of retirement. With this bundle of thoughts churning in my head, I headed to the mountain I had trained in before. I knew that I would only sleep more if I returned to the lodge, so I came here thinking that I would do some much-needed training. However, what is she doing here? I already knew that Namgung by was here because of the razor-sharp intent I had sensed, smothering the atmosphere all around. As I climbed the mountain, it was slightly less intense than yesterday, but I was still sure that it was definitely Namgung by who was emitting this intent. However, I soon felt another presence near her. Arg! Why won't you get hit once? The other presence, a girl, could be seen aggressively swinging her wooden sword and fell to the ground after being tripped by Namgung by foot. Unlike yesterday, there was no one spectating this time around. I assumed that was because they were immersed in individual training. The girl who fell rolled on the dirt for quite some time. It looked like this wasn't the first time she had rolled like that because her uniform was stained with copious amounts of dirt already. Why is she here? Namgung by was looking at her opponent with her usual apathetic face. And the girl, rolling on the ground with clear anger on her face, was shockingly Gu Ryungwa. Chapter 78. Not ugly. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Not ugly. Brother. I heard a sobbing voice coming out of my lips while basking under the warm sunlight, unlike the foggy mist that usually was the norm for cold seasons. This was a memory from my childhood. In the woods near our house, I toddled my way forward. I was the seeker in this game of hide and seek. I preferred being the seeker because it was scary to hide by myself. Brother said that he was confident in hiding himself, so he told me not to worry about only me being the seeker in this little game of ours. Brother, where are you? I continued to walk forward, shifting through the branches of the trees. Brother wasn't very good at hiding like he boasted himself to be. He would always be found out by me in the end without exception. This time too, I noticed a small part of his clothing poking out from behind a tree not far away. My sobbing face soon turned bright and cheerful right away. I found you. I poked my head toward him quickly to give him a scare, huh? But unexpectedly, my brother wasn't there. There was only his clothing, the clothing of the Gu clan, stuck in that place. Brother, where are, Boo, Kayak? I screamed out loud and collapsed onto the ground after being surprised from behind. I was so scared that even tears began coming out of my eyes. When I turned around, I was greeted with the sight of my brother laughing at me. He had sharp and fierce eyes, but when he smiled, he looked very kind and warm. Did I scare ya? I was so scared, I knew this would work. I felt annoyed at how proud he looked for scaring me like that. Because of the annoyance I felt, I punched my brother's shoulders a few times with my small fists. But my brother kept laughing as though my attacks were not able to hurt him at all. After laughing for a while, he reached his hand out toward me, telling me to grab onto it. I put a puzzled look on my face but grabbed his hand nonetheless. Let's go back, Mom is probably waiting for us already. Yeah, we'll get in trouble if we stay here longer, you know. That was not possible. None of us ever saw Mom getting angry. However, I just nodded my head anyways as I liked listening to my brother. The hand I grabbed, belonging to him, was filled with endless warmth. The clothing he used to scare me was put on me before I could even notice. He did it because it was rather cold today. It was cold, but I was still able to handle it since there were two of us here. Sister Yancio bullied me again earlier. Sister did, yeah. She glared at me saying that it was her mom, even though Mom is ours. I see. Brother patted my head with those warm hands of his after hearing my words. I felt like my heart was melting with pleasure when he patted me like that. Since sister is also one of us, she can also say that, right? Yeah, I guess. The way brother looked at me always felt so warm and comforting. I liked that about him. I didn't like father's cold sharp eyes, but brother's and Mom's eyes always felt warm and I loved that about them. That was all I needed in this life. That was what Gu Ryungwa thought back then. What should we eat for today? Did I want to eat fish today? Fish. Okay, let's go and ask. Yeah. After walking a bit together with my brother, we arrived at our home. Since it was almost nighttime, the lights had already been turned on, and I could see Mom waving her hand toward us from far away. Mom. I powerfully waved my hand toward her. I then quickly ran towards Mom and hugged her tightly. Mom's hands were cold because of waiting outside for us for so long. But I still loved those cold hands of hers. Soon, Mom patted my brother's head who came after me. It was the season of cold but I was still able to feel endless warmth due to the people I had with me. That was all I needed in this life. I thought that I would be happy as long as I got to keep such a wonderful life. That was the small dream that I had at that young age of mine. However, the heavens didn't exactly want that to happen. A week later, everything was ruined and Gu Ryungwa's life also hit rock bottom. At every summer, the Mount Hua sect usually hosted a tournament for the students enrolled in it. It was a simple tournament that consisted of the students of the Mount Hua sect participating in it to decide a winner. However, it was also a process for the sect to choose new swordsmen of Mount Hua. The second-generation students of the Mount Hua sect that hadn't already become the swordsmen of Mount Hua were required to participate in the tournament, while it was optional for the third-generation students to participate. Due to that rule, Gu Ryungwa was technically required to participate in the tournament as she was a second-generation student of the sect, but she was given an exception by the elders and the first-generation students because of her circumstance and was thus allowed to fight the third-generation students instead. But Gu Ryungwa rejected that offer. She didn't want to fight the third-generation students and she felt that she couldn't back down from the tournament for preserving the honor of her master. Swish. Swoosh. The wooden sword swung heavily by me without stopping for a single instant. I swung the sword countless times ever since I had joined the Mount Hua sect. I couldn't yet reach a level where I would be able to use the Plum Blossom sword arts, and there were also other skills of Mount Hua that I needed to learn as well that I hadn't been able to do yet. I was getting desperate at this point. Even I knew that I was running out of time. On the contrary, my master told me to relax and take my time, saying that I had lots of opportunities awaiting since I was still young. However, even if I do become an exemplary person in the future, did that accomplishment have any meaning without my master by my side? Gu Ryunghwa bit her lips at that thought. The end of her master's lifespan, the end of this year, that the immortal healer mentioned was slowly creeping nearer and nearer. There was still so much I had to accomplish before I could even start making my sword blossom with plum blossoms. Even so, I wanted to show my master the sight of my sword blossoming with those ethereal plum flowers. If I had talent like that person. The person that was essentially the youngest among the third-generation students, and the person that was being hailed as the future of the Mount Hua sect. The sword dragon, young Peng. If I had his talents, then maybe I wouldn't have been feeling so desperate right now. And just like that, before I could even notice it, I had started feeling jealous of young Peng. And I knew for a fact that there was no way for me to be like him, which didn't help in calming me either. Because of that, I had the feeling that I wasn't able to swing the sword in the correct way. Sigh. My hand was stinging due to swinging the sword for so long. Even so, only the thought of proceeding with my training came to mind. My master wasn't in a state to teach me anything right now. So I had to teach myself everything. Ugh. As I was slowly becoming more and more desperate, nothing seemed to be going well for me. And today felt especially worse due to the scene I had encountered in the morning. The scene of Gu Yangchen and those girls frolicking around him. The family member I'd seen for the first time in a while looked to be in an even sadder state than before. The brother in my memories had already died. He died on the same day as my mother left this world. At least, that was what I felt. The kind boy who had infinite warmth in his heart was burnt alive by the smoldering flames of the Gu clan. And the only thing that was left in its stead was an evil, vengeful spirit of abomination. I still had a little bit of hope left. The Gu Yangchen that I had seen for the first time in a long while felt different than before. He wasn't necessarily the warm brother from her memories, but he was still different from the repulsive person that he had been the last time I saw him. He at least looked like he had thrown away all those disgusting desires of his that he used to have in those sharp eyes of his. Which is why I still had some hope left in me. That he would return to the brother I once used to know and cherish. But that was a pointless thought. That's impossible. I still wasn't able to throw away my past even though I thought I had given up on it when I ran away from everything in fear. As I had been distracted by these useless thoughts, I decided to just swing my sword some more to drive them away from my mind. Today was a day when no students of the Mount Hua sect came to the mountain to train. It was most likely because of the tournament. I honestly preferred this environment. Since it wasn't easy to train in that uncomfortable atmosphere filled with people. So, as I started to train once more, swoosh, I stopped myself after hearing some distinct sounds. Swoosh. Swish swoosh. The sounds of someone swinging a sword. However, something was different about it. Unlike the sound that the Mount Hua sect sword arts usually make, this sound was distinctly different from that. Furthermore, just what was this sharp sensation that I was constantly feeling? I moved my steps toward the direction that the sound came from. But I still wondered, what if it was one of the martial artists of the Mount Hua sect? Even though that thought came to my mind, I wasn't able to stop my steps. When I finally arrived at the destination, swoosh, my hair started blowing due to the fierce wind generated after each sword strike. Ha! The first thing that entered my eyes was her enchanting beauty. White hair that flowed along with her beautiful sword art and those alluring blue eyes of hers that only focused on her sword was a truly enchanting sight, and equally annoying for my mind. Every one of her steps, incorporated into her sword arts, was light and swift, however, I was 100% sure that each of those strikes of her sword was nowhere near light as her footsteps. Elegance. How come I was able to see elegance blended in between her fierce movements? I couldn't understand. Was I not even capable of understanding it? Does that mean that she was just that much more skilled in the sword arts than I was? Many thoughts lingered in my head, but my eyes never left the display of her sword art. They were unable to. How can she have such fluid movements? What does she feel when she swings her sword? I wondered in my mind, if I could ever become skilled enough to swing a sword like that one day. At that thought, I could even hear the excited beating of my heart. I knew I was distracting myself from training with these thoughts and watching her, however, I had a feeling that I would be able to gain something from the showcase of this phenomenal sword art if I could just finish watching it. As the woman was about to swing her sword, cutting the air once again using her ethereal sword arts. Phew! She suddenly stopped her movements altogether, not even finishing the last swing. Seeing her stop, I couldn't help but feel disappointed and unsatisfied in my heart. I felt like I could have gained something if I could have watched it in full. However, there was a bigger problem at hand that I had to face other than my disappointment. It was the fact that I had secretly watched her train. Furthermore, I even tried to gain something from someone else's training. I had watched her training as if possessed, but I still had no excuses for doing something like that. Maybe I can use the fact that an outsider was training in the mountains of Mount Hua as an excuse. While I was trapped in my thoughts, the woman's eyes met with my own. Ha! Now that I took a better look, her face seemed familiar. She had pale white skin, mirroring her equally white hair, and enchanting blue eyes. And even though she was covered in sweat right now, that only made her look more seductive rather than just dirty. It was breathtaking for even a person of the same gender as me to look at her beauty, and it was definitely one of the girls that were with Gu Yangchen. She was a martial artist. I didn't have the chance to find out before due to the scene I saw in the morning, but I only thought of her as just some beautiful girl following my brother, but to find out that she was a martial artist. When our gaze met, I began sweating profusely. Her apathetic face made it impossible for me to know what she was thinking. She just tilted her head once after looking at me and then nodded once she looked at the wooden sword in my hand. What does that mean? I was worried that I would get into trouble for secretly watching her train, but the words that came out of the woman's mouth were unexpected, to say the least. Want to, pardon. Duel. I frowned thinking that I had misheard her. Asterisk 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 asterisk, and now here I was at the present. Thankfully, she didn't seem to have gotten mad at me for secretly watching her train. She didn't even seem to have cared about that matter, in fact. Which only made me wonder as a martial artist myself. How can she be like that? Furthermore, I couldn't help but be dumbfounded after I had been challenged to a duel by her. I was wondering in my mind if she was just perhaps trying to teach me a lesson for secretly watching her training, but I soon dismissed that thought. I accepted the duel though, as I felt that chances like these didn't really come often in a martial artist's life. So the duel between us began in earnest. I repeatedly charged at her for a long, long time, but I was not even able to manage to brush her clothes with my wooden sword. My uniform had already become stained with dirt as I had to constantly roll around everywhere while attacking her, while my body started trembling non-stop as I was out of energy due to moving around without rest. I looked up at Namgung by with tired eyes and thought, how can I not even touch her even once? It was only by a hair's breadth every time, which only made me think that Namgung by was purposely letting me almost hit her. But why? Is she trying to teach me? But then why? After breathing heavily for a while, I finally stood up once again to face her. Namgung by who was waiting for me wasn't even breathing heavily like she did when she was training by herself. In fact, she even looked quite bored. At her level, I felt like she would have no problem facing any of the second generation students. I didn't know her age, but she looked to be around 20 years of age or maybe a bit older. She wasn't much older than young Peng too. There really were so many talented geniuses out there in the world. I felt like my pride was getting hurt at that thought. Soon, I spoke out to her after remembering the events of the morning. We saw each other in the morning, right? What's your relationship with that boy? Unexpectedly, my question had hit her hard for some reason. I could tell that since her emotionless face had broken ever so slightly after I had asked her that question. Her eyes seemed to have gotten a bit bigger while a side of her eyebrows seemed to be contorted into an imperceptible frown. Namgung Bai Dada spoke after thinking for some time about what to reply. Fiancé, he's not someone that you should be with. I don't know what happened for you to be with him, but it's such a waste for you to be with him. For you to be around that disgusting and ugly guy who never puts effort into anything is just wasteful. So it's not too late to. I couldn't finish my words. As I felt the atmosphere had suddenly shifted drastically. The woman in front of me still had that apathetic look on her face, but something was different about her. Thump! I held my sword up instantly when I saw her taking a step forward in my direction. What the? Something had changed about her, but I was unaware as to what. The person standing across me reminded me of someone at that instant. The sword master. My very own master. Not too long ago, Master had shown me her overpowering presence when she was still in somewhat of a healthy shape. I was able to slightly feel the same pressure coming from the woman that was walking towards me. Alarm bells went off in my head and I had no choice but to put the little bit of chi left in me into my sword to defend myself from the incoming danger. The woman then spoke out. Not ugly. Pardon. He's not ugly. Is she angry? Earlier, the way she spoke sounded so weak and faint, but her voice now felt a bit stronger than before. Judging by the overpowering energy, I now knew. That she had gone easy on me before, I knew that already, but I still didn't expect her to be so powerful. I tried to look for a solution because there seemed to be a misunderstanding between us, but my body had already frozen on spot due to her overwhelming presence and pressure. I was scared out of my mind. If you say something like that, the woman's footsteps became faster. At the same time, her figure instantly disappeared from my eyes. You deserve to be punished. With a flash of blue light, a wooden sword appeared right in front of my eyes. I instantly closed my eyes shut. Was it my mistake? Since just before I closed them, I felt like I had seen flames surrounding me from all sides. Chapter 79. Foxier than one might think. 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Foxier than one might think. 1. A few seconds after she clenched her eyes shut. After sensing that she hadn't gotten hit, unexpected as that may be, Gu Ryunghwa opened her eyes once again. She believed that the first thing she would see after opening her eyes would be the tip of a wooden sword, but it happened to be someone else's back instead. It wasn't the biggest back out there, but it oddly resembled the one that was present deep in her memories. Blaze. Along with a familiar sound, she was able to feel the scalding heat. The wooden sword that had been swung towards her was actually stopped in its tracks by someone's hand. Before she could even realize just what had happened in this place, the heat that was smothering the entire area ceased to exist. And the voice of the owner of that back rang out. What are you doing? With the advent of that voice and the subsequent question, the woman dueling against Gu Ryunghwa immediately avoided making eye contact with that person. Gu Ryunghwa was finally able to register the identity of the person who had saved her just now. He had sharp eyes along with an expression that seemed to convey his annoyance with everything in this world. It was none other than her own brother, Gu Yangchen. Asterisk 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 asterisk, I thought it was going to break. My hand was still left tingling. I interfered in between as I thought something irreversible might have happened if I didn't, but even then I didn't expect something like this to take place here. Namgung Bai Da had channeled chi into her sword, however, it was not to a high degree. But even then, if I hadn't used my chi too, then my hand would have surely crumbled into pieces. What are you doing? Namgung Bai avoided eye contact with me when I asked her that question. Did she also know that she went too far? Why did you even bother to use a sword against her as an opponent? Namgung Bai still didn't respond to my questions. I think I saw them having some sort of a conversation, but I wasn't able to hear them quite clearly from back there. The still hesitating Namgung Bai finally decided to speak with a sulky expression on her face. She said ugly. What? Even though that's not true, what the hell is she saying? Did Gu Ryunghwa call Namgung Bai ugly or something? Does she really have that bad of a sight or what? Gu Ryunghwa was certainly on the prettier side among the ones who had the blood of our clan. Furthermore, she didn't even have those sharp and scary looking eyes like most of the members of our clan, which made her look even prettier. But she still was lacking compared to Namgung Bai. I looked at Gu Ryunghwa and asked her. Did you call her ugly? What the hell are you talking about? I know, right? What the hell am I even talking about? I felt like there was some sort of misunderstanding going on in here. Gu Ryunghwa looked at me with a strange expression. What? What's your relationship with that woman? Her. She was looking at Namgung Bai. Did I never tell her? Right, I didn't, did I? She's fiancé. Similar to last time, Namgung Bai had cut me off once again. Gu Ryunghwa quite literally froze after hearing the word that came out of Namgung Bai's mouth. She then repeatedly looked at me and Namgung Bai back and forth, and gradually began to frown with a look of disbelief in her face. As if she was saying, but how? To be more accurate, she was probably thinking something along the lines of, someone like you is marrying her. Really? Whatever she may be thinking right now, it was hard to explain things about our circumstances to her. You came all the way here with your fiancé. Not that I did, we just met on our way here. We really did meet midway. However, Gu Ryunghwa probably wouldn't believe that it was a coincidence for us to meet on the way to this place. But it really was like that. Lost in her own thoughts, Gu Ryunghwa gazed at Namgung Bai for some time before she was seemingly reminded of something all of a sudden. Namgung Bai who was also looking back at her with the usual emotionless expression on her face. Gu Ryunghwa got up from the ground and patted the dirt and dust off her clothes and slowly trudged toward Namgung Bai. I thought that she would bark back at her for what happened here, so I decided to interfere, but surprisingly, Gu Ryunghwa bowed her head down in front of Namgung Bai instead. Thank you for your guidance. She was being respectful to her even though Namgung Bai was the reason for her current miserable condition. Namgung Bai looked at Gu Ryunghwa for some time and then proceeded to pat the grass that was on Gu Ryunghwa's shoulders with her hand. Gu Ryunghwa flinched for a moment at her action but then continued to speak in a small tone. I also apologize for speaking so rudely. Why was she looking at me when she said that? After Gu Ryunghwa apologized, Namgung Bai apologized back as well. I'm also sorry, huh? Why are they saying sorry to each other all of a sudden? While I kept dumbfoundedly standing in this place due to the confusion about this whole situation, Gu Ryunghwa started to run off into the distance. Where are you going? Mind your own business. After shouting back at me for who knows what she was mad at me for, she again bowed her head down to Namgung Bai before disappearing into the forest. Even though I saved her. What's up with her? I really didn't know what was going on anymore. After Gu Ryunghwa left, Namgung Bai came closer to me. She had an awkward expression on her face. I wasn't going to actually hit her, I smiled after hearing her excuse. I know. The minuscule trace of chi inside her sword and the force behind her swing told me that she was just trying to scare her with that strike. But even so, I interfered, thinking that she would hurt Gu Ryunghwa, so part of it was my fault as well. Seeing the awkwardly standing Namgung Bai I asked her a question. What were you doing with her anyway? I was just having a duel with her. Right, it does make sense since it's you. How can anyone be this obsessed with duels? Maybe she's also possessed by a ghost like me. I really considered that thought in my mind. Namgung Bai suddenly asked. You know her. I stopped thinking for a moment, wondering what the hell she was asking about again. Soon however, I looked toward the direction where Namgung Bai was staring at and understood what she meant, as that was the direction where my sister had ran off to. Oh, did I never tell Namgung Bai about her? I responded to her in a nonchalant voice, not thinking much about it. She's my little sister. Ha! I guess I never really told her. So she was doing all that with her not even knowing that she was my sister. I guess that did make sense as we didn't really resemble each other at all. However, Namgung Bai's expression after she heard my response was problematic. I had never seen her make that face before in both of my lives. What's wrong? Which even forced me to ask her what was going on. This was the first time I'd seen her look like that. How should I say this? It looked like she was in despair, or maybe she was feeling shocked. There were a myriad of emotions mixed into that expression of hers. Though the nature of them was certainly on the negative side. She started to mumble something to herself, but I couldn't hear it as she spoke in a very quiet tone. So I went closer to her. Mess, what? I messed up, those were the 3 words she had been muttering over and over again. I didn't know just what she messed up to act like that, but I just ignored it because I was used to Namgung Bai being weird. *********** The next day soon arrived. Thankfully, I was able to get another room, so I had a good sleep the previous night. Namgung Bai didn't really say anything about it, but YC was definitely feeling disappointed, judging from the face she was making. I did feel a bit bad for her, but since I had told Honghua about it beforehand, YC was taken by her to sleep in a different room. Thanks to that, I was able to get a good sleep for the first time in a while. Elder Shin just rambling on about anything and everything was a bit annoying, but I was tired enough to fall asleep even with him rambling on like a madman. I believed that since I had gotten a good sleep this time, then it would be fine for me to train with young Peng now. So I followed him to train. But I was wrong. Terribly wrong. I swear this clan's training is torture in disguise. Self-torture at that. I went back to the lodge with trembling legs and collapsed to the floor immediately after I entered my room. I usually didn't sweat or get cold due to the nature of my chi, but for me to sweat this much. And they do this crazy training every day. This really was a clan of perverts. What did you just say? Elder Shin started cursing at me again, but I just ignored him. I was used to his shouting already, so I was able to easily ignore him now. While I was sprawled on the floor, sweating like no tomorrow, a cup of glass was put down next to me. It was YC who was accustomed to doing that whenever she came to this place. Young master, are you okay? No. I'm not okay. I was down on the floor, exhausted out of my mind. No way in hell was I okay. I asked YC about Namgung Bai's whereabouts since I wasn't able to find her in the morning. Sis went out a bit ago. That was what she told me in response. Is she training with her sword art somewhere? I picked up the cup of water with my still trembling hands and quickly gulped it down my throat. I must have been extremely thirsty considering how sweet the water I drank felt. While I was drinking water, YC continued wiping my hair, which was drenched in sweat, with the towel on her hands. It was pointless since I was about to shower anyways, but I was still grateful to her. Thanks. Should I bring you more water? Nah, I'm good. I got up after pushing my body up with my arms. While I was sitting on the floor with all parts of my body still aching from that monstrous training I had before, YC came close and placed her shoulder next to mine. What's up? You can lean on me. On you. Did I look that tired? For her to tell me to lean on her. I always made fun of saying that she was round and whatnot, but she was actually on the skinnier side. She was, in fact, so skinny that I felt like she would fly away even with the slightest push. With that said, however, it made no sense to me how she was able to get all that power during house chores with such a fragile-looking body, but I didn't think much of it since it was after all. I leaned on her shoulders but she didn't wobble, not even a little bit. She had such a fascinating body. You feeling glad? I immediately felt like bursting out into laughter after hearing Elder Shin's words. Do I feel glad? I looked at after hearing his question. She was looking toward the pond inside of the lodge I was assigned to with the usual look on her face. Did she find the fish in the pond cool? Or is she thinking about eating them? I suddenly felt nervous about that thought considering all the things she usually said about eating weird things. Although I don't think even she would really eat them, I think. I continued to stare at while leaning on her shoulders and she suddenly turned her head to look at me. When our eyes met, smiled brightly. My mind went blank after seeing her smiling face. It hit me harder than usual due to my close proximity with that smile of hers. Her face really is a weapon of mass destruction. Maybe I need to cover that face up starting now rather than a few years later. Considering the way she looked now even in a servant's uniform, I was already able to imagine just how beautiful she would become when she fully grew up. That was basically why I was considering putting a veil on her face starting from now. Even though I knew that I wouldn't be able to be by her side forever. I then began to wonder, of what they were thinking. Both the Sword Emperor and my father. Young master. I responded back to her call, but she didn't speak back. just called me and then kept on staring at my face. I stared back, and it felt like I was going to get absorbed into those deep black eyes of hers. Why is she just staring at me without saying anything? I was about to speak up as I thought that she wouldn't say anything at this rate, young Master Gu. When young Peng suddenly appeared with a bright smile on his face. I feel like something like this had happened before already. Maybe it's just me. I lifted my leaning body up after young Peng visited my lodgings. Having seen me like that, young Peng avoided eye contact with me, not knowing what to do in this situation. What brings you here? I apologize. It seems like I interrupted you. No, I wasn't doing anything. You even held your breath back there, you liar. Young Peng still looked like he was nervous even while speaking with me. I was thinking that it was because of me, but I noticed that he was looking at something else. I think he was looking at I began to wonder the reason behind young Peng's weird behavior, so I looked toward wondering what was up with that, but I only saw that she was smiling like before. Master Young Peng. Oh, I just came here to ask you if you want to have a meal together since we finished our training. I tilted my head in confusion after hearing young Peng's words. Why come all the way here when there are other third-generation students he can ask? Don't they eat all together usually? It seemed like something was going on between them behind the scenes. I had to eat anyways, so I readily accepted his offer. Oh, then you have a seat, since I have to go and take a shower. I had sweated a lot so I needed to wash up. You should just stay here, since you probably don't have anywhere else to go, right? No, I'll just rest on the ground, or climb up a tree and rest up there. So please, just quickly come back. Oddly specific and contradictory of you, isn't it? Why was he acting like that? Anyway, just take a seat here. I'll be back in a jiffy. Wait. I think I heard young Peng calling out to me from behind, but I just ran away to take a shower since I was feeling quite hungry. I wonder why young Peng is acting so weird today. Maybe he went crazy because he trained too much. That seemed to be the most probable cause behind his behavior. While I was walking towards the shower, Elder Shin suddenly started speaking up inside my head. Did you not see the girl's face? Her face. You don't even know how to look at one's expressions now, do you? What the hell is he saying all of a sudden? I thought she was just smiling as usual when I looked at her. So, what in hell did Elder Shin see, or maybe she hid it on purpose? She looks like a puppy, but she is foxier than I thought. What the hell is this old man spouting? I ignored him since I thought that he was just rambling on about random things again. Since, no matter how I looked at it, YCOL.A wasn't a fox.